Each of Ethan Tanner's strikes was precise, inflicting excruciating pain without rendering Leonard Holt unconscious. For Leonard Holt, this was worse than death. Agony racked his body, sweat pouring off him like rain, tears streaming down his face. Thump, thump. Ethan Tanner stomped on Leonard Holt's ankles. Darkness threatened to consume Leonard Holt, but in the haze, he saw Ethan Tanner raise his foot again, this time aiming for his face. Leonard Holt's eyes snapped open, filled with terror. He hadn't expected Ethan Tanner to be so powerful, nor to dare attack him right in front of Drake Black. Wasn't this a direct slap in Drake Black's face? Leonard Holt thrashed his head, consumed by regret. He shouldn't have messed with Emily Grace. If he'd known how formidable Ethan Tanner was, he wouldn't have dared involve Drake Black. Slap. The sharp sound reverberated through the room, everyone present, except Emily Grace, drawing a sharp breath. The blow knocked Leonard Holt unconscious. Ethan Tanner, without a glance at the limp body, walked towards Drake Black. Well? Satisfied with this explanation, he asked. Drake Black stood rooted to the spot, speechless. Less than a minute had passed since Leonard Holt's brutal takedown. He swallowed hard, his insides turning to ice. How had he crossed paths with such a ruthless individual? But the thought of the Black Dragon gang backing him bolstered his confidence. He looked at Ethan Tanner and said, "Brother, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Drake Black, Green Dragon Hall Master of the Black Dragon Gang in North Fong City. May I know where you're from?" Revealing his status as one of the 4 Hall Masters of the Black Dragon Gang was a clear attempt to assert dominance. However, facing the formidable Ethan Tanner, Drake Black had no intention of fighting. This was a man who clearly killed without hesitation. The killing intent Ethan Tanner had just exuded was enough to terrify him. He'd never killed anyone, but he'd seen it done, and he recognized that chilling aura. He'd only felt such a cold, deadly presence from Black Dragon, the gang's leader, and Evil Dragon, the White Tiger Hall Master. Chapter 28, Wolf Howlet was killing intent, an aura born from taking lives. The intensity of Ethan Tanner's killing intent surpassed even that of Black Dragon, the leader of the Black Dragon Gang. How could this not terrify him? Ethan Tanner looked at Drake Black as if he were an idiot. He couldn't understand the point of bringing up the Black Dragon Gang now. Even if they wanted to come after him, he wouldn't care. These petty gang squabbles were child's play compared to the battlefield. Sure, people died, but how could it compare to war? Bam! Ethan Tanner punched Drake Black in the gut, sending him crumpling to the ground like a boiled shrimp. Drake's eyes bulged, blood vessels bursting as disbelief washed over him. He couldn't fathom Ethan's strength, it was inhuman. His insides felt pulverized, but he dared not make a sound, fearing Leonard Holt's fate. "Oh, so you know how to hold back, huh?" Ethan's voice was soft, yet dripping with disdain. He'd used only 30% of his strength, enough to make Drake suffer, thanks to a little trick called the Wolf Howl, a Wolf Fong mercenary technique. The Wolf Howl, executed with a specific technique, creates a vortex of force within the opponent's body, leaving them feeling like their insides are being shredded. This was merely 30% of Ethan's power. A full-force blow would liquefy Drake's organs. Wolf Fong techniques weren't for show, they were lethal. Wolf Fong's reputation in the underworld wasn't unearned. After dealing with Leonard Holt, Ethan's rage subsided. He'd taught Drake a lesson, further brutality was unnecessary. A venomous glint flickered in Drake's wincing eyes. His position as the Azure Dragon Hall leader of the Black Dragon Gang wasn't earned through brute force. Despite his muscular physique, his true weapon was his cunning mind. He was the kind of insidious snake who could kill you without you ever knowing how. His brawny build was the perfect disguise, fooling people into thinking he was just a muscle-bound oaf. Those who underestimated him paid dearly. Ethan, unconcerned with Drake's thoughts, picked up his phone, his lazy demeanor returning. Grinning at Emily Grace, he said, "Emily, you're stacked." Emily Grace blushed crimson. Despite being a mother, Ethan's words flustered her. "You little rascal. Still teasing your older sister?" Emily Grace playfully scolded, her smile betraying her amusement. She'd witnessed Ethan's handling of Leonard Holt, and something deep within her stirred at his dominance. It had been years since a man had fought for her. She saw no cruelty in Ethan's actions, not even when he crippled Leonard Holt. After dinner, Ethan and Emily returned to the company. Ethan resumed his bored lounging when his phone suddenly rang. "Your grandson's calling, your grandson's calling." An obnoxiously loud ringtone blared from Ethan Tanner's phone, the magazine he draped over his face falling to the floor as he woke. Luna Vale, beside him, couldn't help but laugh, covering her mouth. Ethan Tanner glared at her, only to be met with a playful, heart-stoppingly cute, stuck-out tongue. The phone continued to ring, and Ethan Tanner felt a pang of annoyance. He didn't know who would be calling, his number was supposed to be unlisted. Furthermore, the caller ID showed an unknown region. "Hello." Ethan Tanner answered politely, only to be met with a booming voice roaring, "You little brat. You've been gone so long without a single call. Have you forgotten me already?" The voice on the other end was full of vigor. Ethan Tanner grinned, recognizing Theo Grant. He replied flippantly, "Gee, I thought you'd kicked the bucket, old man. Guess I was looking forward to that in vain." Since it was Theo Grant, it was no surprise he knew his number. Wolf Fong mercenaries had access to the most advanced communication technology in the world. Tracking a number was child's play, let alone just one. Stepping out of the office and into the hallway, Ethan Tanner's tone shifted. "All right, what's up? I don't believe you called just because you missed me." Though his tone remained light, a chilling undercurrent of danger was palpable. Theo Grant laughed heartily. "Good to see you haven't gone soft. Getting straight to the point, we received intel yesterday. Someone put out a hit on the CEO of Tan Corporation in Wind City, a $450,000 bounty." Ethan Tanner's brow furrowed. He didn't ask why. If Theo Grant knew, he'd say. His silence implied he didn't. As Ethan considered who would target Sophia Tan, Theo continued, "The contract was snatched up quickly by a Heaven's Ghost assassin, some small fry, nothing to write home about. Still, stick close to Miss Sophia, just in case." Theo's tone turned teasing at the end, but the underlying warning was clear. Ethan simply replied with a non-committal, "Oh." The voice on the other end continued, "Actually, the main reason I called was because I missed you. Get lost." Ethan Tanner hung up without hesitation, a soft smile gracing his lips. Theo Grant, the formidable man who took him in as a teenager, taught him resilience, survival, was father, mentor, and friend all rolled into one. To him, Theo Grant was his father. He remembered Theo taking a bullet for him on his first mission, carrying him for miles when they were cornered. Even when he decided to leave Wolf Fong, Theo didn't object. Watching the sun dip towards the horizon, Ethan Tanner narrowed his eyes, his thoughts unreadable. He murmured, "A Heaven's Ghost assassin, huh? Mention Heaven's Ghost to an average person, and they'd likely think you were crazy." But in the underworld, the name evoked fear and respect. Heaven's Ghost, an assassin organization on par with Wolf Fong, but unlike them, they specialized in assassination. Moreover, their success rate is incredibly high. They're a crazy organization. As long as you pay enough, they'll take on any target, no matter who you want dead. "Why are you following me?" After work, Sophia Tan saw Ethan Tanner trailing behind her like a shadow and asked coldly. Regarding the deliberate targeting of Ethan Tanner this morning, Sophia Tan's anger had subsided somewhat, but that didn't mean she accepted him. On the contrary, her disgust for Ethan Tanner hadn't lessened in the slightest, she still wanted to tear him apart. Seeing this, Ethan Tanner didn't mind. Instead, he grinned and stepped forward, saying, "Wife, let's go home together." Sophia Tan gritted her teeth, her beautiful eyes fixed on Ethan Tanner. I've told you I'm not your wife, and don't call me that again. Also, if you want to go home, you have the key, take a cab yourself. Clearly, she had no intention of going with him. Come on, wife, cab fare is so expensive these days. Wouldn't it be more economical to go together? Ethan Tanner shamelessly continued to follow Sophia Tan, determined to go with her. But along the way, Sophia Tan ignored him, not even wanting to speak a word. They got off the elevator and went straight to the parking lot. With a click, Sophia Tan opened the car door, got into the driver's seat, and gave Ethan Tanner no chance to speak, starting the engine and driving off, leaving him in a cloud of dust. Damn it! Watching Sophia Tan's Audi disappear, Ethan Tanner felt like crying but couldn't. He had been dumped twice in one day, by the same person. Running out of the parking lot, Ethan Tanner hailed a taxi, said Seaview Villa District, and closed his eyes to rest. Even if Sophia Tan ignored him, he couldn't ignore her. Theo Grant had agreed to let him leave Wolf Fong to protect Sophia Tan. Now that he knew someone wanted to assassinate her, he had to protect her. The taxi driver thought he had misheard and couldn't help but ask Ethan Tanner again, "Sir, did you say Seaview Villa District?" Ethan Tanner looked at the driver with a strange expression, thinking, did I not speak clearly? However, he nodded again to confirm his answer. The taxi driver wasn't to blame for mishearing, because who living in Seaview Villa District couldn't afford a car? Who would take a taxi? Driving for over 10 years, this was the first time he'd encountered this situation. Chapter 29, Assassin. The taxi entered Seaview Villa District, and Ethan Tanner directed the driver to the Champagne Villa. Seeing Sophia Tan's Audi already parked outside, Ethan Tanner paid the fare and ran into the villa. Huh? Where is everyone? Wife, are you there? Ethan Tanner looked around the villa but couldn't find Sophia Tan. He went to her room and knocked, but after waiting a long time, there was no response. Bang! Anxious, Ethan Tanner kicked open Sophia Tan's door. The room was empty. Just as he was about to check the balcony, his eyes suddenly froze, staring at the clothes hanging on the rack. Ethan Tanner's eyes nearly bulged out. Gulp. His mouth felt dry, and he stood there with a silly grin. You bastard, what are you doing? Sophia Tan's cold shout suddenly came from behind him. Ethan Tanner jumped, thinking he was done for. The hand reaching for the clothes on the rack snapped back like lightning. Then, feigning nonchalance, he looked at Sophia Tan and said, Haha, wife, where are you going? I knocked for ages, and you didn't answer. I thought something happened, so, Ethan Tanner gestured towards the open door, implying he'd entered out of concern for her safety. Sophia Tan didn't buy it. She glared at him with a look that could kill. Ethan Tanner would have died 1,000 deaths under her gaze. What's in your pocket? Sophia Tan pointed at Ethan Tanner's pants pocket, her voice ice cold. Ethan Tanner looked down, his heart sinking. Damn it, how did it show? This was going to be the death of him. He hadn't expected Sophia Tan to finish showering so quickly. He hadn't even managed to leave the room before she returned. What to do? What to do? Ethan Tanner's mind raced, panic rising like a wildfire. Should he take it out? The thought was extinguished as quickly as it sparked. He wouldn't take it out, not even if he were beaten to death. Well? Chicken. Sophia Tan gave him a cold smile, but her eyes blazed with fury. Caught red-handed, she thought. Let's see how he squirms his way out of this one. I'm not chickening out. Ethan Tanner stammered, stubbornly refusing to admit anything. Acknowledging it would be utterly humiliating. Then take it out and let's see. Sophia Tan advanced, closing in on Ethan Tanner, intending to retrieve the item from his pocket herself. Ethan Tanner clamped both hands over his pocket, offering a smile more pained than amused. What are you doing? Haven't you heard of propriety? If you come any closer, I'll scream. Sophia Tan looked at him with disdain. She'd never met someone so brazen. As if she wanted to do anything to him. Taking a deep breath, she prepared to reach into Ethan Tanner's pocket. Look out! Suddenly, Ethan Tanner moved. He grabbed her around the neck and rolled, pulling her down onto the bed with him. Sophia Tan's eyes widened, staring at Ethan Tanner hovering above her. Her mind went blank. They lay entangled on the bed, their lips having accidentally met during the tumble. The blankness gave way to a volcanic eruption of anger. You bastard! What are you doing? Despite her vulnerable position, her expression remained composed, though her inner turmoil raged. It was the closest she'd been to a man in years, and her composure threatened to shatter. But Ethan Tanner seemed oblivious to her words, his attention focused elsewhere. Sizzle. The lights flickered erratically, as if short-circuiting, then plunged the room into darkness. Silence descended, and even Sophia Tan's unease settled into a strange quiet. In the darkness, she felt the steady beat of Ethan Tanner's heart against her own. A peculiar sensation washed over her, her breath quickening. His warm breath on her face made her heart race. Sophia Tan held her breath. What was he going to do? Could it be he intended to? Sophia Tan couldn't bear to think further. Despite being engaged, she harbored no affection for Ethan Tanner, only profound disgust. A painful realization struck her, she was utterly powerless. Fear surged within her. If he truly did something to her, what could she do? But relief washed over her as Ethan Tanner merely shifted his hand, making no further moves. Her tension gradually eased, her mind wandering. Could he be impotent? The thought of Ethan Tanner pinning her down yet doing nothing was baffling. Even she couldn't believe she was pondering it. Why did she even care? Ethan Tanner was oblivious to Sophia Tan's thoughts. Had he known she was questioning his virility, he would have coughed up blood, perhaps even cracked open her skull to see what lay within. Just as Sophia Tan moved towards him, he glimpsed a shadow behind the door, a glint of cold steel. In that perilous moment, he pulled Sophia Tan down onto the bed with him. Sensing the disturbance, Ethan Tanner was certain it was a Heaven's Ghost assassin. He hadn't expected them to act so swiftly. Silence descended, broken only by the ticking of his watch. He didn't believe the assassin had left. This wasn't some movie or novel where a missed attack meant retreat. This was a real-world assassin, the kind from the underworld who were relentless. Once they marked a target, they wouldn't relent unless the mission was aborted or they were dead. They would cling to their prey like a shadow until the task was complete. Left. Ethan Tanner roared internally, flinging a coat hanger from the bed. A metallic clang echoed in the darkness. The hanger was intercepted, but he discerned the assassin's movement. The shadow swiftly relocated. Surprise flickered within him. Heaven's Ghost's unique concealment technique had been compromised. How was that possible? Was the opponent a master, or intimately familiar with Heaven's Ghost? Concealed in a corner, the black-clad figure grew more cautious, their heartbeat nearly imperceptible. A blackened dagger was clutched in their hand. A single, light slash had cleaved the coat hanger in two. Its sharpness was undeniable. He watched Sophia Tan pinned beneath Ethan Tanner, a cold glint in his eyes. Eliminating her would complete the mission. But he hadn't anticipated encountering a formidable opponent like Ethan Tanner. Whoosh! Another coat hanger flew towards him. A cold smile played on Ethan Tanner's lips. This assassin was clearly a small fry. A true expert wouldn't cling to a compromised concealment technique, turning themselves into a target. Such a move invited a swift demise. This assassin was likely bronze rank within Heaven's Ghost, perhaps not even that. In the underworld, ranks were clearly defined, but one truth remained. The biggest fist held the most sway. Within the assassin circles of the underworld, a unified ranking system exists. Barely making the cut is the bronze rank which Ethan Tanner just mentioned. Above that are silver, then gold assassins. Beyond that, even Ethan Tanner isn't entirely clear, as he was previously a mercenary, not an assassin. What? Are you still planning to hide? Ethan Tanner's cold voice carried a hint of disdain. A bronze-level assassin was nothing more than a child in his eyes. However, Sophia Tan's presence beside him forced his hand. Asterisk whoosh. Whoosh, asterisk Ethan Tanner flung dozens of coat hangers, each one accurately striking the assassin's hiding spot. A sense of amusement flickered within him. Was this assassin truly this foolish? Did he still not realize that his hiding place was useless? Sophia Tan also sensed something amiss. It seemed there was a third person in the room. This startled her. The Seaview Villa complex, inhabited by the wealthy, boasted a robust security system, designed to provide residents with peace of mind. Yet, someone had silently infiltrated such a tight security system. It was terrifying. Could the entire system have malfunctioned? How could Sophia Tan imagine that this third person was an assassin from the Heaven's Ghost organization, a figure from the underworld whose sole purpose was to take her life? Chapter 30, Wounded in the darkness, the assassin grew frustrated. Ethan Tanner had repeatedly discovered his hiding spots. How could he not know he'd been exposed? Yet, he couldn't find an opening to strike. What choice did he have but to keep moving, constantly seeking an opportunity? He couldn't just stand still and be a target. Ethan Tanner's hand groped the bed, and he inwardly cursed. He was out of coat hangers. He'd lost his offensive tool. Once he moved away from Sophia Tan, he couldn't guarantee her safety. This stalemate couldn't continue. The assassin, having undergone rigorous training, could undoubtedly endure. Ethan Tanner could too. But Sophia Tan beneath him was a woman. The assassin couldn't possibly stay all night, and neither could they remain in this position. Sophia Tan certainly wouldn't last. He could already feel her legs trembling slightly. How are you holding up? The sudden realization of another person's presence in the room filled Sophia Tan with an indescribable fear. The unknown was never comforting. Moreover, given the current situation, it was clear that this individual was targeting them, and their intentions were hostile. But hearing Ethan Tanner's voice was like finding a companion on a lonely journey, a sense of security amidst the storm. She nodded slightly, unsure if Ethan Tanner could see. In this moment, she found him not so detestable. At least now, he made her feel safe, even without saying a word. All right, listen. There's an assassin here, and you're his target. We can't keep this up. We'll tire out first, and if he seizes that opportunity, we're in danger. Ethan Tanner paused after speaking, allowing Sophia Tan to digest his words. He continued, I have a plan. First, you must leave this room, otherwise, I can't act freely. Ethan Tanner explained his plan, then asked Sophia Tan, so? Any problems? Can I do this? Sophia Tan was filled with disbelief, and Ethan Tanner revealed the third person lurking in the shadows was an assassin. Fear gripped her deeply when she learned the assassin was targeting her. After hearing Ethan Tanner's plan, Sophia Tan responded with a lack of confidence. Although she was a corporate CEO, a powerful woman in the eyes of others, she was still a woman. Some things women couldn't handle, like this situation. Yes, trust yourself. Ethan Tanner kissed Sophia Tan's forehead. Sophia Tan stiffened, feeling a warmth spread from her forehead. Her tense body gradually relaxed. Ethan Tanner's encouraging words stirred something within her. He was the second man besides her grandfather to encourage her like this. But Ethan Tanner's next words shattered the favorable image she had painstakingly built of him. All right, Sister Sue, my life is in your hands. I'm still a virgin, with a beautiful life yet to enjoy. You can't let me die. That wasn't so bad, but then he muttered, I should have looked at you more closely last time. Sophia Tan overheard him, her face turning pale. She thought she must have been blind to think this jerk wasn't so bad and gave her a sense of security. You're better off dead. Sophia Tan yelled and suddenly dashed towards the door. At that moment, Ethan Tanner moved. As he threw the last coat hanger, the assassin adjusted his position, hiding behind the curtains by the window. This was the most crucial element of Ethan Tanner's plan, maintaining a certain distance from the assassin. His plan was simple, have Sophia Tan run out of the room, giving him enough space to maneuver. The most dangerous moment was when Sophia Tan reached the door, the easiest time for the assassin to attack. For the plan to work, the assassin had to be positioned opposite the door, giving Sophia Tan a chance to escape. Whoosh! As Sophia Tan reached the door, the assassin hiding by the window flung a dagger. Under the moonlight, the black dagger didn't reflect any light. The dagger's tip, carrying a cold glint, flew toward Sophia Tan at the door. Ethan Tanner, already on his feet, wouldn't let the dagger hit her. Heh, not so simple. As Ethan Tanner lunged towards the dagger, a low voice echoed through the room. Besides Ethan Tanner, only the assassin remained. This was clearly the first sound he'd made, but his voice sent a shiver down Ethan Tanner's spine. Reaching Sophia Tan's side, Ethan Tanner produced a dagger seemingly out of thin air. Unlike the assassin's dagger, his gleamed coldly under the moonlight, like a tiger baring its fangs. Clang! Ethan Tanner caught the thrown dagger aimed at Sophia Tan, but as he grasped it, the blade split in two, hurtling towards his chest, leaving him time to deflect only one, his left side exposed. Clang! Slash! Ethan Tanner blocked the dagger aimed at his left chest, but his right hand was pierced as he desperately prevented the other blade from reaching his heart. Damn it, my turn, Ethan Tanner growled, crimson eyes fixed on the assassin. The renowned Wolf King of the Wolf Fong mercenary group, reduced to such a desperate defense, his fury surged. Agony radiating from his palm ignited Ethan Tanner's rage. He lunged, delivering a brutal blow to the assassin's gut. Whoosh! His fist tore through the air, a wolf's howl. That's, wolf. Ethan Tanner's speed was blinding. The assassin, stunned and terrified, crumpled to the floor. He never imagined Ethan Tanner was Wolf Fong. That blow, the wolf howl, a signature Wolf Fong technique. On the ground, his insides felt pulverized. Blood trickled from his lips, but his gaze held a strange knowing. The mission was a bust. Wolf Fong protection, yet classified only B rank. A joke. He gritted his teeth, crushing the cyanide capsule hidden in his molar. Ethan Tanner watched the assassin's suicide, unsurprised. His pierced right hand, combined with the force of his blow, accelerated the bleeding. It flowed freely, unstoppable, his arm numb. Soon, the villa's power was restored. As the lights flickered on, Ethan Tanner examined his swollen, purple, pierced hand. A chilling realization, poisoned. He swiftly applied Wolf Fong pressure point techniques, a sigh of relief escaping him, but the purple blood continued to flow, his face grim. Purple blood, one of Heaven's Ghost's 7 deadly assassination poisons. True to its name, the victim's blood turns purple, death arriving when the transformation is complete. Ethan Tanner's face was a mask of grim understanding. This was serious. Ethan Tanner. What happened? You're bleeding so much. Sophia Tan rushed back to her room after flipping the breaker, finding Ethan Tanner pale and bloodied. Blood poured from his pierced right hand, a disturbing shade of purple. What's wrong, wife? Worried about me? Ethan Tanner's weak voice held a hint of amusement. Chapter 31 Change. This time, Sophia Tan didn't argue with Ethan Tanner. She immediately called the Tan family's private hospital, telling them to come quickly to Seaview Villa. Then, she called her grandfather, Liam Tan. At this moment, in the special ward of the Tan family's private hospital, Ethan Tanner lay quietly on the bed, his breathing very weak, his face turning purple. Although he was in a coma, his brows were furrowed, showing that he wasn't as calm as he appeared. His body was enduring inhuman torment. Outside the ward, Sophia Tan anxiously watched Ethan Tanner lying inside. In the hallway, she paced restlessly, her knuckles white from clenching her fists. A night of emergency treatment had yielded no results. When the doctor stepped out of the ward, the news Sophia Tan received was that Ethan Tanner's condition was continuing to deteriorate. Liam Tan, also looking worried, watched Ethan Tanner in the ward. When he learned of Ethan Tanner's injury, he called Theo Grant. After understanding the situation, Theo Grant was on his way to China and instructed them to continue administering antibiotics and antibodies to Ethan Tanner before his arrival. After the hospital followed the instructions, Ethan Tanner's condition did improve somewhat, but the effect was minimal. A day later, Ethan Tanner's condition worsened, and he was transferred to the intensive care unit, with nurses reporting his status around the clock. Ethan Tanner's heartbeat was now several seconds apart, sometimes even more than 10 seconds. The electrocardiogram on the monitor displayed a flatline. No one knew when he would breathe his last. It could be the next minute, the next second, or even now. The doctors rushed around, not daring to complain. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, Ethan Tanner's electrocardiogram in the ward appeared as a straight line on the monitor, frightening the nurse, who immediately ran out of the ward, shouting, "It's not good. It's not good. The patient's heartbeat is 0. Immediately, countless doctors rushed around in the hospital hallway. Ethan Tanner, lying on the bed, was being both electrocuted and given artificial respiration, but the electrocardiogram recording his heartbeat still didn't fluctuate, it remained a flat line. After half an hour of frantic activity, the doctors inside gave up. They had exhausted all emergency measures, but to no avail. Ethan Tanner was dead. The doctor inside stepped out, shaking his head at Liam Tan, saying, "I'm sorry, Patriarch Tan. We did our best." Sigh. Liam Tan sat in the hallway, sighing, his face unable to hide his regret and grief. Sophia Tan also stood in the hallway. When she heard that Ethan Tanner was beyond hope, her chest suddenly felt tight, as if a wall was pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. Dead? Sophia Tan looked at Ethan Tanner lying still on the hospital bed with lifeless eyes, murmuring to herself, as if lost in a trance. She still remembered when Ethan Tanner told her about that plan. Because of his own lack of confidence, he had said in a determined voice, "Okay, trust yourself." At that time, he had also kissed her forehead. "You bastard, how could you die?" Sophia Tan cursed silently, her eyes red-rimmed, losing control at this moment, crouching on the ground, sobbing with her face in her hands. She didn't know why she was crying, she just knew she felt terrible. She just wanted to cry, as if only crying could release her current emotions. Images of her interactions with Ethan Tanner from the very beginning flashed through her mind. From the start, he always had that roguish grin. Then, their inexplicable engagement, and Ethan Tanner calling her wife every time he saw her. Everything from the past replayed in her mind, then the images shifted to last night. She realized he wasn't the frivolous, shameless person he appeared to be. Last night, he saved her life, and now he was a cold corpse lying on a bed. Sophia Tan cried, her heart aching. She suddenly felt so pitiful. Why, just when she was about to decide to love someone, did they leave her like this? Rumble. The loud roar of an engine suddenly erupted outside the hospital. Liam Tan, seemingly aware of what it was, stood up and walked towards the hospital entrance. A green military helicopter circled above the hospital roof, then slowly descended. A minute later, it landed firmly on the helipad. Shortly after, a middle-aged man in a black Zhongshan suit stepped out. He had a shaved head, and a palpable aura of menace emanated from between his thick eyebrows. But upon seeing Liam Tan, his menacing aura vanished without a trace. He approached Liam Tan like an old friend he hadn't seen in a long time, embraced him, and said, "So, old too, it's been over a decade, hasn't it? You're looking a bit frail." Liam Tan gave a wry smile at this. It had indeed been over a decade. Back then, he was still young, just in his early 60s, but now he was just an old frame. Indeed. You haven't changed a bit in all these years. Makes a man envious. Tim Tanner didn't say anything more. At this moment, a bald, hulking man and a strikingly beautiful woman in tight leather clothing emerged from behind him. The bald giant carried a suitcase. He wore a tight tank top that strained against his bulging muscles, making him look like a wild beast. The alluring woman beside him possessed an almost otherworldly beauty, her blood-red curls cascading down her back. Nearby, several security guards and medical staff bowed their heads, careful not to appear flustered in her presence. "Let's go. How is Ethan Tanner now?" Tim Tanner asked the two behind him, then looked at Liam Tan inquiringly. Liam Tan, his face grim, explained the current situation. Tim Tanner didn't linger at the hospital. He went straight to the medical room where Ethan Tanner lay, looked at Ethan Tanner, now a corpse on the bed, and said to the doctor at the back door, "Prepare a critical isolation room for me. I want to transfer the patient there now." Tim Tanner's voice carried an undeniable authority. The words, "Ethan Tanner is dead," almost escaped his lips. The doctor nodded and led them to the intensive care unit. Tim Tanner told the two people behind him, Flame Heart, Bull Brock, prepare the silver needles and the blood serum. The two responded and immediately began their preparations. The large man, Bull Brock, opened the suitcase in his hand, revealing it to be filled with various types of fresh blood. The woman, Flame Heart, pulled out a total of 108 silver needles from her hair. These needles varied in length and thickness, each one unique. "Long needle," Tim Tanner simply said, and Flame Heart immediately drew out the longest silver needle and handed it to him. One by one, all 100. And 8 needles were inserted into Ethan Tanner's body, his face particularly densely covered. Rip. Tim Tanner tore open Ethan Tanner's clothes, revealing the muscular physique on the bed, the muscle lines clearly defined, but his skin was a strange shade of purple. Ghost cave ceiling hand. Looking at the distinct red spots on Ethan Tanner's body, Tim Tanner said with some surprise. These red spots were the pressure points Ethan Tanner had sealed when he realized he had been poisoned. "Now I'll begin the bloodletting. Bull Brock, when I say transfuse, you immediately transfuse." The blood in his body is almost completely contaminated with purple blood. I'm afraid only the last bit of blood in his chest remains pure. Whoosh! A small silver knife suddenly appeared in Tim Tanner's hand, and he immediately cut Ethan Tanner's wrist artery. Purple blood continuously flowed out of his body. The purple blood, upon contact with the air, immediately turned necrotic, and within 10 breaths, it solidified into blood clots. As the blood flowed out, Ethan Tanner's strange purple skin began to gradually fade, finally disappearing completely. A streak of purple blood, about a foot long, appeared between his eyebrows. No matter how much Ethan Tanner's blood flowed, it didn't disappear. Tim Tanner frowned at the purple blood streak on Ethan Tanner's forehead and quickly sealed several pressure points on his body. Transfuse. Tim Tanner withdrew his focus and spoke immediately. Bull Brock, already prepared, inserted the 4-needle into Ethan Tanner's vein as soon as the words left Tim Tanner's mouth. The artery on his wrist, which had stopped bleeding due to blood loss, now began to bleed again as fresh blood was transfused into his body. However, the blood flowing out was completely different from before. #### Chapter 32, Blood Exchange. Light purple blood flowed from Ethan Tanner's body. Each bag of transfused blood circulated through his body once before flowing out. As the bags were used up one by one, the blood flowing from his body gradually changed from light purple to bright red. When the last bag was empty, Tim Tanner sealed the wound on Ethan Tanner's artery. The 108 silver needles inserted into Ethan Tanner's body were removed, but he still had no heartbeat. His face was pale, and his body gradually grew cold. Seeing this, Tim Tanner frowned, putting both hands into the pockets of his windbreaker. In his hand, he held a sealed thumb-sized test tube containing a red liquid. Looking at Ethan Tanner, who had purged all the purple blood toxins but still showed no improvement, he seemed to be hesitating. At this moment, he happened to see Sophia Tan through the glass of the intensive care unit, her eyes swollen from crying and her face haggard. Thinking of something, a determined glint flashed in his eyes. He took the test tube from his pocket and said to Bull Brock, "Use the black prohibition, draw and transfuse, use the golden blood to harmonize, then transfuse it into his body." Handing Bull Brock the test tube filled with the crimson liquid, Tim Tanner produced a set of acupuncture needles. Unlike the previous silver needles, these were a gleaming gold. As Tim Tanner held them, a bizarre phenomenon occurred. Upon contact with the air, the golden needles began to dissolve. Without hesitation, Tim Tanner swiftly inserted the dissolving golden needles into Ethan Tanner's acupuncture points. After inserting needles into over 100 acupoints, beads of sweat dotted Tim Tanner's forehead. The process clearly wasn't easy, especially since some needles vanished before he could apply them to Ethan Tanner. Bull Brock accepted the test tube with an incredulous expression. Flame Heart, overhearing Tim Tanner's intention to use the hack cam on Ethan Tanner, was equally astonished. They hadn't anticipated him using both the hack cam and the golden blood on Ethan Tanner. However, seeing Tim Tanner already in motion, they remained silent. As his subordinates, their duty was to obey, not question his decisions. But their expressions shifted as they looked at Ethan Tanner, silently wondering what bad luck the kid had stumbled into. As the golden needles merged into Ethan Tanner's body, his pallid complexion began to change. The shift was subtle, but a hint of color returned. A faint breath followed. Thump. Ethan Tanner's heart beat once, then a second time. Gradually, Ethan Tanner's body began to recover. Sensing his stabilization, Tim Tanner commanded, "Administer the hack cam." Bull Brock immediately crushed the bottom of the test tube, drew the red liquid into a syringe, and injected it directly into Ethan Tanner's heart, emptying the syringe completely. August in Wind City. Despite being late summer, the heat was scorching, showing no sign of relenting. On the bed lay Ethan Tanner, his complexion rosy, his breathing and heartbeat steady, like any healthy person. After Tim Tanner's blood transfusion, Ethan Tanner's bodily functions had gradually returned to normal. Yet, a month later, he remained unconscious. Screech. An Audi pulled into the gates of the Tan family's private hospital. Sophia Tan emerged, dressed in a black suit over a crisp white shirt. Carrying an insulated bag, Sophia Tan walked directly into the hospital. Male nurses along the way stared at her with undisguised lust. Click-clack. The sound of Sophia Tan's heels echoed down the hallway. Ethan Tanner's room was on the 4th floor. During his month-long coma, Sophia Tan visited whenever possible, but the sight of him lying motionless always brought a pang of guilt. She blamed herself, convinced that Ethan Tanner wouldn't be in this state if it weren't for her. Every night, she tormented herself, her dreams haunted by visions of him waking up. Sophia, at the hospital again. A man suddenly appeared before Sophia Tan and called out to her. His attire clearly marked him as a doctor of this hospital. He looked to be in his 20s, with a sunny disposition and a constant smile that made him seem approachable. Seeing the person who had come, Sophia Tan frowned. His name was Danielle Chase. Unlike the other doctors, he was a returnee from overseas studies. His medical skills astonished even seasoned doctors in their 70s and 80s. He had been invited to work at the Tan family's private hospital by the family themselves, so his status was much higher than that of the other doctors. Sophia Tan simply nodded, paying him no mind. Danielle Chase had been captivated by Sophia Tan's beauty from the moment he first saw her. Afterward, every time she came to the hospital, he would find a way to appear before her. Sophia Tan felt neither particularly fond of nor averse to him. However, as his appearances became more frequent, she naturally grew annoyed. She didn't say anything, but her initial responses, which consisted of a sentence or two, had dwindled into the current coldness. Sophia Tan walked past Danielle Chase with an impassive face. Danielle Chase awkwardly retracted his outstretched hand, maintaining his smile as he followed her, seemingly unconcerned by her indifference. Undetected beneath Danielle Chase's unchanging smile lurked a hint of malice, his growing impatience with Sophia Tan. Usually, the nurses in the hospital, upon seeing Danielle Chase, would have their eyes sparkling. A single word from him, and they would do anything he asked. But now, Sophia Tan treated him coldly, ignoring his attempts to ingratiate himself with her, as if she was oblivious to his existence. How could he tolerate this? His patience was wearing thin. Entering Ethan Tanner's hospital room, Sophia Tan locked the door, leaving Danielle Chase outside. Looking at Ethan Tanner lying peacefully inside, Sophia Tan's heart ached. She suddenly realized how much she longed to see the thick-skinned scoundrel who insisted on calling her his wife. Yet here he lay, silent and still. Sophia opened the thermal container in her hand, took out a metal spoon, and sat down beside him like a little bride. She scooped up some of the soup she had simmered the previous night and fed it to Ethan Tanner. Each time she scooped soup from the container, Sophia gently blew on it to cool it down, then tasted it herself to ensure it was the right temperature before feeding it to Ethan Tanner. Her movements were meticulous and indescribably careful. Her expression was like that of a young woman caring for her husband, a far cry from the usual icy demeanor of the corporation's CEO. Standing outside the room, Danielle Chase watched Sophia feed Ethan Tanner, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He felt a surge of resentment, wishing he were Ethan Tanner. His gaze towards Ethan Tanner was dark, a cold glint flashing in his eyes, as if he had made a decision. Chapter 33, Awakening. After feeding him the soup, Sophia began to clean Ethan Tanner's body, deftly removing his clothes. Sophia blushed as she looked at Ethan Tanner's body, but her hands didn't stop. She dipped a towel in water, wrung it out, and started wiping his face. Her fingertips brushed against Ethan Tanner's skin, feeling his body temperature, feeling his heartbeat. During these moments, she often talked to herself or confided in Ethan Tanner about things on her mind, from work matters to her childhood memories and school days. Thus, Ethan Tanner became the sole witness to her life's journey, from her school days to the present moment. Despite having tended to Ethan Tanner for nearly half a month, the intimacy of touching his skin still caused her to blush intensely. He was, after all, the first man she had ever been so close to. Her feelings for Ethan Tanner were a complex tapestry, woven from initial disdain and even loathing, which had now transformed into a fondness, perhaps even love. She herself couldn't quite decipher the true nature of her current affections for him. Actually, you're not entirely terrible. Just your usual, frivolous self, slacking off at work, occasionally teasing female colleagues. So, my first impression of you wasn't exactly stellar. Sophia paused, observing Ethan Tanner's face, allowing him to process her words. Then, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, she continued, surprised, aren't you? How do I know about your antics at the company? Truth be told, I've been keeping tabs on you since you first joined. Not out of fondness, mind you. Initially, I utterly despised you, even contemplated biting you. You disrupted my peaceful existence. My once tranquil life turned chaotic. And this scoundrel even dared to take advantage of me. At this point, Sophia glanced furtively at Ethan Tanner, lying motionless on the bed, as if fearing he might suddenly awaken and reveal her secrets. But Ethan Tanner's face remained impassive, a source of slight disappointment for her. Yet, she pressed on. "Remember that time I deliberately left you at the villa, forcing you to run all the way to the company? I fully expected you to be late, but you actually made it. Seeing you gasping for breath, I felt a surge of malicious glee. Served you right for seeing my body. But then, that very night, an assassin appeared at the villa. If it weren't for you, I might be dead. And now, here you lie. It's almost comical, isn't it? Because this scoundrel might finally be out of my life." Her voice choked with emotion, and tears began to stream down her cheeks. "But now, I feel lost and afraid. Your absence from my life has left me in turmoil. Wake up, Ethan Tanner. That night, you could have escaped, but you risked your life for me. And that stupid plan of yours, it backfired spectacularly, putting you in harm's way." Sophia Tan wept uncontrollably, tears cascading down her face and onto Ethan Tanner's cheek. Her sobs were silent as she collapsed onto his chest, whispering brokenly, "Ethan Tanner, wake up. Please, wake up. Don't you know I can't bear life without you? You're such a jerk. If you couldn't stay forever, why did you barge into my life, make me accustomed to your presence, only to leave like this? Ethan Tanner, you're a colossal jerk." Sophia Tan's heart-wrenching cries echoed around the room where Ethan Tanner lay, a truly pitiful sight. But there was no response. Danielle Chase, standing in the hallway, had already slipped away, unable to bear witness any longer. He suspected that if he stayed, he might cough up blood from sheer frustration. After crying for a while on Ethan Tanner's chest, Sophia Tan finally stopped, but her red-rimmed eyes told everyone she had been weeping. After cleaning him, her mood calmed. For a month, every moment, she had longed for Ethan Tanner to wake up. At the company, even during her free time, she would visit the department where Ethan Tanner used to work, as if trying to find traces of him there. "All right, I'll visit you again tomorrow. I'll make you some pork knuckle soup." After cleaning Ethan Tanner, Sophia Tan prepared to leave. A mountain of work awaited her at the company, and her visits to the hospital were carved out of her rest time. Taking one last look at Ethan Tanner, tidying the thermos, and covering him with a blanket, Sophia Tan tiptoed to his side. Then, seemingly mustering all her courage, she gently pressed her red lips to his forehead. Her face flushed crimson. Then, as if reassuring Ethan Tanner, she said, "You jerk, didn't you call me your wife? If you wake up now, I'll agree to marry you. Marry me? Ha." A slightly teasing voice suddenly echoed in the room, repeating Sophia Tan's words. Startled by the unexpected sound, Sophia Tan reacted only to realize that Ethan Tanner was awake in his bed. He was looking at her with a smug expression, a smile she knew so well playing on his lips. She just stood there, and laughed until tears streamed down her face. Finally, this jerk was awake. "Huh, wife, did you just say you'd marry me?" Seeing Sophia Tan cry, a wave of emotion washed over Ethan Tanner. He knew she was crying for him. The chains around his heart cracked with her tears, and he saw sunlight, blocked for so long, stream through the fissure and illuminate his soul. The feeling warmed him immensely. In truth, during his month-long coma, his bodily functions had recovered in the second week, and he had regained consciousness. But for some reason, he couldn't wake up, only sensing darkness. He would occasionally drift into sleep, but sometimes he heard Sophia Tan's words during her visits, felt the coolness of her fingertips as she touched him. Looking at Sophia Tan's face, thinner than a month ago, a pang of heartache struck Ethan Tanner. Sophia Tan was overjoyed at Ethan Tanner waking up, but his words made her blush. She hadn't expected him to regain consciousness at that moment. And he had heard everything she said. She wondered if he had been awake for a while, deliberately keeping it from her. If so, he must have heard everything she had said before. Sophia Tan, her face flushed, puffed out her cheeks and said, "No way, you must have misheard. I definitely didn't say anything." Amused by her denial, Ethan Tanner found her playfulness endearing. "How can you be like this? I heard you say you'd marry me, and that's why I woke up. My heart hurts. I guess I'll just go back to sleep." As he spoke, he held his chest, pretending to be in so much pain that he wanted to die. At this moment, how could Sophia Tan not see that he was teasing her? She pouted and glared, saying, "Then don't wake up again, humph." Turning away, Sophia Tan cursed inwardly, "This jerk, teasing me the moment he wakes up. What a bastard, good heavens, is this a joke?" Sophia Tan making this kind of face, Ethan Tanner groaned internally. He never imagined the icy Sophia Tan possessed such a childish side. Her beauty, coupled with her slightly pouting lips, ignited an irresistible urge in Ethan Tanner to kiss her. Sophia Tan, despite her naivete in romance, understood his intent as his lips moved. A flutter of anticipation, like a fawn's frantic dash, filled her chest. Her breath hitched, mind blank, eyes wide as she stared at Ethan Tanner. As Ethan Tanner neared Sophia Tan's red lips, he paused, noticing her wide-open eyes. A moment of silence. Even in his own inexperience, he knew girls closed their eyes for kisses. "Wife, you're supposed to close your eyes when we kiss." Sophia Tan wasn't actually daring to look at him, she simply didn't know what to do. Hearing his instruction, she quickly shut her eyes, but the trembling of her lashes betrayed her inner turmoil. Chapter 34 The Kiss Lips Met. Ethan Tanner, though romantically inexperienced, had devoured countless romance novels since arriving in Wind City, The Housewife's Life, Teenage Assassin, Lowly Daddy Issues. He'd read countless such books. He might not have seen a pig run, but he'd certainly eaten pork. Ow! Ethan Tanner's pained cry echoed through the room. Tongue out, he frantically fanned his mouth. The searing pain was unexpected. Just as he'd excitedly reached Sophia Tan's tongue, she'd clamped her teeth shut. Sophia Tan looked at him innocently. She hadn't known his tongue was there. Her mind had gone blank, and she'd instinctively clenched her jaw. Realization came too late. Seeing his pained expression, she couldn't suppress a grin. "Serves you right," she thought. Seeing her smile, a mischievous fire ignited within Ethan Tanner. He pinned her down. This time, Sophia Tan, wiser from experience, didn't bite. Book theories, after all, were just theories, practical application was another matter. Gradually, Ethan Tanner gained confidence, turning the tables on Sophia Tan. She, now defenseless, flushed crimson under his onslaught. Sophia Tan, too, began to find her rhythm. Just as things heated up, the door suddenly opened. Click. Startled by the sound, Sophia Tan pushed Ethan Tanner away. He glared at the door, ready to tear apart the bastard who dared interrupt. The sight that greeted him made him wish for death. Standing at the door was Liam Tan, the Tan family patriarch. Elder Tan seemed to realize his untimely arrival, tactfully saying, "Oh, well. I don't have anything urgent. You two carry on, I'll come back later." As he made to close the door, Ethan Tanner glared after him, his face darkening. What the hell was this? How could they be interrupted at a time like this, and by Elder Tan of all people? Ethan Tanner could only swallow his frustration. Sophia Tan, mortified to be caught by her grandfather, wanted the earth to swallow her whole. Glaring at Ethan Tanner, she hissed, "Move." After adjusting her clothes, she called out, "Grandpa," her flushed face a stark contrast to the situation. Ethan Tanner also forced out a "Grandpa," feeling truly annoyed. With Sophia Tan's personality, this being a coincidence, who knew when the next opportunity would arise? Elder Tan also looked at them awkwardly. He had been trying his best to bring them together, only to interrupt their intimate moment just as it was about to. He felt incredibly frustrated too. He had initially come to the hospital to visit Ethan Tanner. For over a month, he had visited frequently, but each time he found Ethan Tanner lying still in bed, his expression serene. He would leave with a sigh. But this time, he hadn't expected his visit to coincide with such a scene. Ethan Tanner was awake, and Sophia Tan was there too, and they were. This incident with Ethan Tanner was both a blessing and a curse. The curse, of course, was that Ethan Tanner nearly lost his life and remained in a coma for so long. The blessing? Sophia Tan's view of Ethan Tanner had done a complete 180. Though it was unclear whether her feelings were love or guilt, it was a good start nonetheless. Ha! Ethan Tanner, you're finally awake. And Sophia, you're here too. Elder Tan chuckled awkwardly, earning a sharp glare from Ethan Tanner. He knew he'd ruined things. Sophia Tan stood there speechless, but she glared at Ethan Tanner, the meaning clear, it was all this bastard's fault. If not for him, how could she be in this embarrassing situation in front of her grandfather? In the garden behind the two family's private hospital, Ethan Tanner stretched out lazily, feeling the sun on his skin. He was still a little shaken, greedily breathing in the fresh air. Only he knew he'd just taken a trip to hell and back. It seemed he couldn't afford to be careless anymore. He had killed Heaven's Ghost's copper-ranked assassin, and they definitely wouldn't let it go. They would certainly send more assassins, the question was, what rank would they be next time? Looks like I need to be prepared, Ethan Tanner muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing at the sun. A sharp glint of killing intent flashed within them. Anyone who wanted to mess with him had better be prepared to die. He had been awake for a week, but Sophia Tan wouldn't let him leave the hospital, insisting on continuous checkups to monitor his condition after waking up. Looking at her concerned eyes, Ethan Tanner naturally couldn't refuse and agreed. But what frustrated him was that these checkups had dragged on for a week, with the same procedures every single day. Anyone subjected to the same tests repeatedly for a week would be fed up. Your nephew called you. Ethan Tanner's phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, he recognized Theo Grant's number and a relaxed smile spread across his face. He knew his survival was thanks to Theo's timely arrival, otherwise, he'd likely be facing the Grim Reaper. You little rascal. I knew you were tough, but to survive this, you're practically a cockroach. As soon as he answered, Theo Grant's powerful voice boomed through the speaker. It was clear Theo knew he was awake but had refrained from calling earlier, likely to avoid disturbing him. Ethan chuckled, no way, old man. I'll definitely outlive you. Who'd arrange your funeral otherwise? Damn you. Are you cursing me? Theo roared from the other end, so loud that Ethan had to pull the phone away from his ear. After his outburst, Theo's voice turned serious. All right, it's good you're awake. Now, down to business. Our Wolfang intel suggests that Heaven's Ghost is quiet after their assassin's failure, but we've caught wind of something. During the week you were out, they dispatched a silver-ranked assassin to China. Seems they're determined to eliminate you. They sent a silver-ranked assassin to China. Looks like they're aiming to finish you off. Theo continued, but I wouldn't worry too much. Barring another unforeseen circumstance like last time, you should be able to handle it. As a precaution, I've left Bull Brock with you. He's close to breaking through. With a little guidance from you, we'll have another operative at that level. A silver-ranked assassin? Heaven's Ghost sure thinks highly of me. Do they even know about my Wolfang past? Ethan was surprised by the news, a strange curve playing on his lips. He found it hard to believe but wasn't overly concerned. They probably don't. Otherwise, they'd have sent a gold rank, not silver. But they'll likely figure it out after this. Theo replied, unconcerned. A silver-ranked assassin was hardly a match for Ethan's skills. The previous bronze rank incident was just a fluke. Chapter 35, Danielle chases resentment, haha. Brother Tanner, what brings you here? Just as Ethan hung up, a voice called out from behind him. He knew exactly who it was, a subtle smirk forming on his lips. It was Danielle Chase, walking towards him from the hospital as if he'd known Ethan's location all along. Dr. Chu. Fancy meeting you here. Come, join me for some sun. Ethan greeted him cheerfully, waving him over like an old friend. Ethan had met Danielle through Sophia Tan, but something about him felt off from the start. The possessive lust in Danielle's eyes when he looked at Sophia, the fervent intensity, and then the way he looked at Ethan, outwardly jovial, yet, with a hidden malice lurking beneath the surface. Had Ethan somehow offended him? That was Ethan's initial thought. He didn't even know Danielle, who wasn't even his attending physician. It wasn't until he saw Danielle giving Sophia roses that he understood. So it all revolved around Sophia Tan. Ethan Tanner started his game. Every time Danielle Chase appeared within his and Sophia Tan's sight, he would actively hold Sophia Tan's hand or rub her waist, making the smile on Danielle Chase's face strained. Sophia Tan also saw through Ethan Tanner's little trick, but she didn't like Danielle Chase in the first place, even hated her, so naturally she wouldn't say anything to Ethan Tanner. Danielle Chase walked over and sat down next to Ethan Tanner, a smile still plastered on her face, but a venomous glint flashed in her eyes. Dr. Chu, what are you thinking about? Nothing at all, I was just saying why didn't Miss Tan come to visit you today? Doesn't she come every day? Danielle Chase recovered, replying casually, but every word mentioned Sophia Tan. This was hardly a visit to Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner's forehead bulged with veins. This person really had no shame, asking about another man's wife right in front of him. Wasn't it obvious she had bad intentions, and this guy was still putting on a good face? What a jerk. However, Ethan Tanner couldn't get angry. It wasn't like he could just hit someone for asking where his wife was. That would make him seem petty, so Ethan Tanner pretended not to care and said, "No, Sophia went home today to clean up the room for me. Now that the checkup is done, I can finally be discharged and enjoy our world together." Ethan Tanner deliberately emphasized the words, "our world together," afraid people wouldn't know they lived together. Sure enough, after hearing him say, "our world together," the smile on Danielle Chase's face became unnatural, and the gloom in her eyes deepened. Danielle Chase forced a smile. "Is that so? Then congratulations to Mr. Tanner for finally being discharged." After Ethan Tanner woke up, Danielle Chase also sent someone to investigate his background, but the information obtained was unexpected. She initially thought Ethan Tanner would be some rich young master or the son of some old man in the corporation, but the result was, he was an orphan of unknown origin who appeared in Wind City. Later, he was favored by Old Master Two of the Tan family in Wind City, who arranged for his granddaughter Sophia Tan to be engaged to him, and at first Sophia Tan didn't agree to this marriage, repeatedly proposing to break off the engagement, but Old Master Two was very stubborn, so Sophia Tan reluctantly compromised. But the current situation was that Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner were very close. There wasn't any disagreement or disgust. The care Sophia Tan showed him while this bastard was injured in the hospital drove him crazy. "So you're here, no wonder I didn't see you in the ward just now, and Dr. Chu is here too." Suddenly Sophia Tan arrived at the hospital's back garden, just in time to see Ethan Tanner and Danielle Chase there, and said with a smile. As soon as Ethan Tanner saw Sophia Tan arrive, he immediately stood up and hugged her, exaggeratingly saying, "Sophia, you're here, I missed you so much." Sophia Tan didn't move, she stood there blushing as Ethan Tanner held her tightly. Hearing this, she rolled her eyes. She could see that he was deliberately doing this for Danielle Chase to see. Danielle Chase was initially shaken when Sophia Tan arrived, although she couldn't have her now. Being able to see her every day was also a kind of enjoyment, but seeing Ethan Tanner immediately hug Sophia Tan, Danielle Chase felt like she had swallowed a fly. Danielle Chase forced a smile, glanced at Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan embracing, then stood up and said, "Brother Tanner, Miss Tan, please continue your conversation." I have some matters to attend to, so I'll head to the hospital first. Without looking back, he walked towards the hospital, his face grim. Seeing Ethan Tanner holding Sophia Tan had filled him with a burning envy, wishing it were him in Tanner's place. He's gone now, let go. Sophia Tan's face flushed as Ethan Tanner held her. Only after Danielle Chase left did she speak. Ethan Tanner feigned ignorance. Let go. Let go of what? Sophia Tan was both exasperated and amused by Ethan Tanner's act. A subtle sweetness bloomed in her heart, perhaps this was the taste of love. After the tumultuous events surrounding Ethan Tanner's death, coma, and subsequent awakening, Sophia Tan seemed to have let go of her inhibitions. Figuring that this scoundrel had already seen everything there was to see, and had kissed and touched her already, her attitude towards him had shifted considerably. This change, however, was exclusive to Ethan Tanner. To everyone else, she remained the icy, aloof beauty, the decisive CEO of Tan Corporation. Before Sophia Tan could react, Ethan Tanner's mouth covered hers. His hands began to wander, but this time, Sophia Tan's response was different. She caught his hands, her eyes pleading. Don't, Ethan Tanner. We're outside, people can see. Ethan Tanner, fully aware of their public location, refrained from going too far. He leered at Sophia Tan's ample bosom, enjoying the feel of them for a while before reluctantly pulling away when her legs grew weak. From the hospital rooftop, Danielle Chase watched Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan kissing on the lawn below. His eyes burned with rage, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles cracked. Ugh! Danielle Chase kicked a nearby cement slab. A sharp crack echoed as the slab fractured like a spiderweb, a testament to the force of his blow. Crack, crack. Not bad, the force is still there. A voice spoke. From behind him. Danielle Chase didn't turn, only scoffed. He knew who it was. So. Have you thought it over? What? Do you hate the Tan family that much? Danielle Chase turned, a smile plastered on his face. Before him stood Alexander White, son of Henry Tan of the Tan family. He looked at Danielle Chase with a similar smile. No, not hate. I just want to take back what's mine. A sinister glint flashed in his eyes as he looked down at Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan with undisguised malice. And, curb your curiosity. Don't ask questions you shouldn't. Just know that I can help you. This will only benefit you, not harm you. Alexander White's expression returned to its usual calmness as he continued to address Danielle Chase. Looking at the smile on Alexander White's face, Danielle Chase felt a chill. This man before him was more like a tiger in human skin, his motives unfathomable. 2 days after Ethan Tanner regained consciousness, Alexander White visited him. They'd only met once, but Alexander White seemed to see right through him. Later, he sought me out, claiming he could help me win Sophia Tan. He laid out a plan so chilling it sent shivers down my spine. This man was terrifying, resorting to such tactics even against his own family. Danielle Chase hadn't agreed immediately, asking for a few days to think it over. Today was the deadline, coinciding with the infuriating sight of Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan together. This time, he didn't hesitate. He glared at Ethan Tanner, still embracing Sophia Tan downstairs, his eyes filled with hatred, a flicker of murderous intent rising within him. He looked at Alexander White, eyes bloodshot, and growled, "Can I kill that brat?" His answer was clear. Alexander White, a chilling smile playing on his lips, replied, "Of course." His target was Sophia Tan, not Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner was merely an insignificant pawn in his game. Chapter 36 The boss invites. As Ethan Tanner held Sophia Tan in the garden, he felt a prickling sensation, a gaze on them from the rooftop where Danielle Chase and Alexander White stood. A sense of malice, directed at him, hung in the air. It was the honed instinct of his mercenary days. What's wrong? Sophia Tan, curious at Ethan Tanner's sudden glance towards the hospital rooftop, inquired. He simply smiled, choosing not to burden her with the unsettling feeling. What delicious meal did you make today? I'm starving. Let's eat. Guess. Sophia Tan replied playfully, the picture of a girl next door. Ethan Tanner stared, captivated. The thought thrilled him. An ice queen and a girl next door. How exciting. In Ethan Tanner's room, Sophia Tan had already prepared their meal. They returned, ready to eat. As she opened the thermal container, the aroma of food filled the air, instantly making stomachs rumble. Ethan Tanner swallowed, his previous lack of appetite forgotten. Quick, give it to me. As Sophia Tan unwrapped the layers of the container, Ethan Tanner grabbed a bowl and began shoveling food into his mouth, his ravenous manner resembling a starving beast. It was a way of eating few could match. And each time, Sophia Tan would smile, watching him devour the food with gusto. Slow down, there's soup too, Sophia Tan reminded him gently. Others might have deemed his eating habits uncouth, but to Sophia Tan, the sight was heartwarming. She yearned for this simple domesticity, a life free from the complexities of her work, where her days revolved around preparing meals for him. Waiting for him to return and enjoy her cooking was the greatest joy she could imagine. After clearing the dishes, Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan left the hospital room. He was finally being discharged. While Sophia Tan had visited him daily, their interactions had been confined within the hospital walls. It was a relief to finally be free. Miss Tan, regarding Mr. Tanner's condition, the director wishes to speak with you privately. As they were about to leave, a nurse appeared, stopping them, and addressed Sophia Tan. Hearing this, Sophia Tan frowned. Why would the director want to see her? He must know that Ethan Tanner could be discharged today. Why bring up his health condition now? Sophia Tan was puzzled, but because it concerned Ethan Tanner's health, she didn't hesitate and followed the nurse. Ethan Tanner also wanted to go along, but the nurse stopped him, saying the director only asked for Sophia Tan, not him. Reluctantly, Ethan Tanner stayed behind to wait. You are Mr. Tanner, correct? Our boss would like to have a word with you. Not long after Sophia Tan left, a bodyguard in a black suit and sunglasses suddenly appeared before him, stating their boss wanted to see Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner was taken aback. He'd been in Wind City for 2 months, plus over a month in the hospital, totaling just 3 months. He knew practically no one here. Why would someone be looking for him? Who is your boss? What do they want with me? Ethan Tanner voiced his questions, but the bodyguard replied, I apologize, I'm merely a messenger. I'm unaware of anything else. Then tell your boss I won't go. Ethan Tanner expressed his annoyance. This was arrogant. Summoning him without explaining why was utterly disrespectful. Mr. Tanner, perhaps you should take a look at this. Seeing Ethan Tanner's refusal, the bodyguard didn't leave immediately. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to Ethan Tanner. Glancing at the picture, Ethan Tanner's initially languid eyes widened, his gaze sharpening. He gripped the photo, his hand trembling slightly, betraying his inner turmoil. The photo depicted a girl of 15 or 16, with short, jet-black hair that didn't quite reach her earlobes. Her eyes were wide and lively, her nose straight and high, and her lips slightly pursed in an adorable way. The photo exuded a playful, energetic vibe. It was clearly an old photograph, its edges noticeably faded. Ethan Tanner clenched his fist, looked at the bodyguard, and said impassively, lead the way. He then followed the bodyguard out of the hospital. Meanwhile, Sophia Tan followed the nurse to the director's office. She knocked and entered, only to find the director's chair turned away from her, though someone was indeed sitting in it. Director, I was wondering about Ethan Tanner's condition. Is he still unable to be discharged? Sophia Tan didn't approach, remaining at the doorway, wary. The more she thought about it, the more something felt amiss. But the nurse's mention of Ethan Tanner's health compelled her to come. She desperately didn't want anything else to happen to Ethan Tanner. He's fine, perfectly healthy. But whether he'll remain so after today, I can't say. Now, it's you who has a problem. A voice emanated from the chair, sounding like someone in their 20s, definitely not the director, who was over 60. Who are you? Where's the director? Sophia Tan asked warily, finally noticing something amiss. The director had taken leave to return to his hometown a week ago and couldn't possibly be at the hospital now. Her worry for Ethan Tanner had blinded her to this fact. What's wrong, little sis? We just met last month. Have you forgotten me already? Whirl, the chair facing away from Sophia Tan suddenly spun around. Sitting there, grinning at her, was Alexander White. Meanwhile, Ethan Tanner followed the bodyguard to a car. After leaving the hospital, the bodyguard drove through a maze of turns, heading into increasingly desolate areas. Although Ethan Tanner had sensed something was wrong from the start, every glance at the photo in his hand reinforced his resolve to investigate. Soon, the car reached the outskirts. The bodyguard in black slammed on the brakes, stopping by a lake. Ethan Tanner didn't get out immediately. He remained in the car, looking at the photo, a nostalgic smile on his face that masked a deep ache. On the lake, as soon as the car stopped, numerous figures in black appeared, each wielding a 3-meter-long machete. Under the sunlight, the blades gleamed gold, leaving no doubt as to their sharpness. These men quickly surrounded Ethan Tanner's black car, giving him no chance to escape. Ethan Tanner put the photo away, carefully tucking it into his clothes, and stepped out. He didn't even glance at the men in black. Instead, he addressed someone in a taekwondo uniform standing outside the circle. So, I'm here. Are you still too afraid to show yourself? Heh heh, it seems you knew this was a trap all along. Yet you still came. Should I call you brave or foolish? The figure turned around. His taekwondo uniform was open at the chest, a black belt tied around his waist. According to taekwondo rules, he was a top-ranked black belt. Oh. I didn't expect it to be you. Ethan Tanner was surprised when he saw the face of the person who had lured him out. He hadn't expected it to be Danielle Chase. But how did he get that photo? Doubt nodded him. Heh heh, surprised, aren't you? Danielle Chase glared at Ethan Tanner, surrounded by the men in black, his eyes filled with murderous intent. He advanced towards Ethan Tanner, his face contorted in a frenzy, roaring, "Do you know? Scum like you doesn't deserve Sophia. She's mine. Yet you bastard dared to embrace her in front of me. You deserve to die." Oof, with that, Danielle Chase closed the distance to about 7 or 8 meters from Ethan Tanner, yelled, and launched himself into a flying kick aimed at Ethan Tanner's face. A direct hit would have either killed him or knocked him unconscious. But Ethan Tanner wasn't about to let him land a blow. A taekwondo black belt might seem formidable to others, but against a seasoned soldier, he was outmatched. Thud, Ethan Tanner easily blocked Danielle Chase's kick and calmly asked, "Where did you get that photo? Are you just going to keep dodging?" Danielle Chase snapped, retracting his hand. He was inwardly shocked, he hadn't expected Ethan Tanner to be a martial artist. "I'll ask you one more time, where did you get that photo?" Ethan Tanner's voice turned icy, sending a chill down even Danielle Chase's spine. Hashtag Chapter 37, Sophia Tan kidnapped elsewhere. Sophia Tan's face shifted slightly when she saw Alexander White in the dean's office. She hadn't expected him to be here. Could he possibly want to see her? Composing herself, Sophia Tan regained her usual composure and coldly asked, "Why did you impersonate the dean to summon me here?" "Heh heh, my dear sister, being CEO for so long has certainly given you an air of authority." Alexander White didn't answer her question, instead chuckling before his expression turned cold. But I'm here now to take back what's rightfully mine. Crash. With that, Alexander White hurled the teacup on the table to the floor, the sound of shattering porcelain echoing in the room. Immediately afterward, two men in black kicked open the office door. Alexander White, what are you? Sophia Tan's words were cut short as the two men in black rushed in and knocked her unconscious. Alexander White uttered a curt, "Take her away," and led the way out of the office, leaving behind only the scattered white shards of the broken teacup. By the lake on the outskirts of Wind City, Danielle Chase continued his relentless assault on Ethan Tanner, but despite his efforts, he couldn't even graze Ethan Tanner, let alone land a solid blow. Frustration gnawed at him, he felt like Ethan Tanner was mocking him. Clearly capable of fighting back, Ethan Tanner continued to evade, making Danielle Chase feel like a fool, his attacks repeatedly failing. "It seems you're not going to talk. Then I'll just have to make you." Ethan Tanner, tired of the game, clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a straightforward, unadorned punch at Danielle Chase. Feeling the force of Ethan Tanner's punch, Danielle Chase knew he couldn't dodge. He gritted his teeth, bracing for the impact. Boom! Danielle Chase crossed his arms in front of his chest, taking Ethan Tanner's punch directly on his forearms. Even so, the force of the blow sent him stumbling back 7 or 8 steps, leaving a trail of deep footprints in the ground. Powerful. That was Danielle Chase's immediate impression after taking Ethan Tanner's punch. Impossible. Danielle Chase stared in disbelief. Ethan Tanner hadn't moved an inch, standing firm as a rock. Danielle Chase couldn't believe it. Could Ethan Tanner really be that strong? He must be using some kind of trick, Danielle Chase reassured himself, clenching his fists and charging at Ethan Tanner again. Thump. Before he could even get close to Ethan Tanner, a swift kick to the gut sent him flying backward. He crashed to the ground, feeling like his insides had been ruptured. He couldn't muster the strength to get up. 2 moves. It had only taken Ethan Tanner 2 seemingly effortless moves to take him down. "I'll ask you one last time. Where did you get that picture?" Ethan Tanner's voice was glacial, and a palpable killing intent radiated from him. Though not directed at Danielle Chase, it was enough to make him feel suffocated, acutely aware that Ethan Tanner was now contemplating ending his life. Watching Ethan Tanner stride towards him, his face drained of color. "Quick, hurry, kill him." Faced with the threat of death, Danielle Chase completely lost his mind, screaming shamelessly at the black-clad men surrounding them to attack Ethan Tanner. In this moment, he forgot his hatred for Ethan Tanner, his possessive desire for Sophia Tan, and the fact that he was the one who invited Ethan Tanner here. He only wanted to survive, to escape this place. Hearing Danielle Chase's command, the men in black charged towards Ethan Tanner with gleaming blades. Facing the encirclement, Ethan Tanner's expression remained unchanged. He punched one attacker down, seized his blade, and parried 7 or 8 simultaneous strikes. The clang of metal resonated through the air. Ethan Tanner's blade whirled like a tornado, occasionally slicing an arm or a thigh. Those struck fell to the ground, unable to rise. Ethan Tanner's hands moved ceaselessly with the blade, his feet equally active. Though he could deflect 7 or 8 attacks at once, he couldn't handle a dozen. When outnumbered, he used his feet to kick away anyone who got close. His blade, like a divine weapon, sliced through 5 incoming blades with a single swipe. Boom! Soon, Ethan Tanner single-handedly defeated over 70 opponents. What do you want?" Witnessing Ethan Tanner's feat, Danielle Chase felt ridiculous, like a clown. With each step Ethan Tanner took closer, Danielle Chase's heart pounded. He was terrified Ethan Tanner would kill him with a single stroke. Each of Ethan Tanner's steps was a test of his racing heart. I'll tell. Finally, Danielle Chase crumbled under the pressure. With Ethan Tanner only 7 or 8 steps away, and the sharp blade palpable, his resolve shattered. "I don't know where the photo came from. Someone else gave it to me, saying if I showed it to you, you would definitely come." Danielle Chase confessed his ignorance of the photo's origin, lowering his head, afraid to meet Ethan Tanner's gaze. "Who was it?" Ethan Tanner frowned, curious about who wanted to target him and how they obtained the photo. Sensing Ethan Tanner's cold tone, Danielle Chase dared not utter another meaningless word, quickly revealing the person who gave him the photo. "It was Alexander White. He ordered me to do this. He said he would take Sophia Tan, and I should lead you away." Danielle Chase immediately confessed Alexander White's involvement, even revealing his plan to save his own life. Ethan Tanner felt a surge of unease. Sophia Tan, he had almost forgotten. Grabbing Danielle Chase like a chicken, Ethan Tanner dragged him to a black car parked by the road. He glared coldly at him and said, "If anything happens to Sophia, you'll pay with your life." Ethan Tanner's voice was ice cold, and Danielle Chase didn't dare question his sincerity. He was certain that if anything happened to Sophia Tan, he wouldn't be able to live with himself. On the way, Danielle Chase prayed incessantly that nothing would happen to Sophia Tan. He cursed Alexander White's ancestors for 18 generations, never expecting the bastard to give him the most dangerous task. Now, his life was in someone else's hands. Vroom. The engine roared to life as Ethan Tanner sped off. From the outskirts to the two families' private hospital usually took nearly half an hour, but disregarding speed limits, he arrived in under 15 minutes. Ethan Tanner rushed to the director's office as soon as he got out of the car. It was empty, with no sign of Sophia Tan. Suddenly, Ethan Tanner's eyes fixed on a broken porcelain cup on the floor. Touching the remaining tea, he felt a slight warmth, indicating that someone had left about half an hour ago. Panic seized Ethan Tanner. "Sophia, please be all right." His face grim, he walked out of the hospital towards his black car. Danielle Chase, seeing Ethan Tanner's expression, felt his heart sink. Could it be? Had something happened to Sophia Tan? Danielle Chase thought fearfully, but seeing Ethan Tanner's face, he swallowed hard. He couldn't see any way out for himself. "Tell me how you communicate with Alexander White," Ethan Tanner growled, suppressing his burgeoning rage. He was like a wounded lion, and anyone who provoked him now would face dire consequences. Just then, Ethan Tanner's phone rang. It was Liam Tan, the two-family patriarch. His voice was filled with worry. "Ethan Tanner, is Sophia with you? I just received a call. They say they've kidnapped Sophia and demand 1,000 billion for her release. I'm calling to confirm if she's with you." "Sophia is not with me, and she has indeed been kidnapped." Ethan Tanner's voice, raw with anger, crackled through the phone. On the other end, Old Man too fell silent after hearing the confirmation of Sophia Tan's kidnapping. A moment later, Liam Tan's voice returned. "Ethan Tanner, come back here. We need to discuss how to save Sophia." Chapter 38, Ethan Tanner's Fury. The two-family villa. Ethan Tanner drove his black car to the two residents. Inside the villa, Old Man Two and other members of the two family were already present. Ethan Tanner dragged Danielle Chase inside, immediately drawing everyone's attention, their gazes filled with curiosity as they looked at Danielle Chase like a chick in his grasp. Thud. Ethan Tanner unceremoniously threw Danielle Chase to the floor, his face dark as he looked at Henry Tan. He wasn't sure if Henry Tan knew about this. If he did, what role did he play? Who is this? Isn't that Dr. Chu? What happened? The two families' hall suddenly erupted in commotion. Some recognized Danielle Chase, while others speculated about what had happened. Although they were all members of the two family, they didn't live in this particular villa. They had their own properties and businesses elsewhere. Liam Tan wouldn't summon them unless something significant had occurred. "Ethan Tanner, what in the world have you done? You've caused Chu why this misery?" At this moment, a woman of about 23 or 24 stepped out from the crowd and spoke. Her face bore a resemblance to Elder Tu, her long hair dyed a burgundy color, and her red lips were alluring. Ethan Tanner recognized her as to me, the daughter of third uncle Sophia Tan. Within the Tan family, she was a freeloader, spending her days on makeup and beauty, accomplishing nothing of substance, living off the annual dividends from the family business. She was, in short, a useless hedonist. At any other time, Ethan Tanner might have been in the mood to banter with her, but now, his mind was elsewhere. Sophia Tan had been kidnapped, the situation was unclear, and his only concern was her well-being. Ignoring me, Ethan Tanner sat aside, expressionless, waiting for Elder Tu to speak. Hey! Are you deaf? I'm talking to you, can't you hear? Seeing Ethan Tanner ignore her, Mia's face darkened, and she snapped at him. In her eyes, Ethan Tanner was nothing but a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. Everything he had was thanks to the Tan family, without their support, he wouldn't even deserve to be here. As a member of the Tan family, she possessed an inherent arrogance, believing that Ethan Tanner should obey them. Despite his engagement to Sophia Tan, he was merely a glorified dog of the Tan family, no different from the servants. She jumped in because she fancied Danielle Chase, whom she had been pursuing and with whom she had shared a more than platonic relationship. Ethan Tanner remained silent, sitting there expressionless, pondering why Alexander White would kidnap Sophia Tan. Could it truly be because of the 1,000 billion? After careful consideration, he dismissed this speculation. It was clearly impossible, because if it were just about money, he wouldn't have needed to do it now. He could have done it long ago, and back then, when Liam Tan managed Tan Corporation, the group had even more resources than Sophia Tan did now. So what was the real reason? Me continued to berate him, her voice sharp and venomous, her words increasingly vicious. The others in the Tan family hall frowned slightly, showing their disapproval of her behavior, but remained silent. Within the Tan family, everyone had their own agenda. The relationships between them were not as harmonious as they appeared on the surface, beneath it all lay countless schemes and power struggles. Anyone who only looked at the surface would likely be swallowed whole. To me, shut up. Have you no manners? Elder Tu roared angrily. He, too, was deeply worried about Sophia Tan's safety. Initially, he had only wanted to discuss the matter with Ethan Tanner, but as a shrewd businessman, he also wanted to see what everyone in the Tan family was thinking, hence the large gathering. Hearing Elder Tu's rebuke, Me immediately fell silent, but her gaze towards Ethan Tanner remained venomous. All right, let's talk about why I've called you all here today. Elder Tu, observing the silence, spoke up. Ethan Tanner, now composed, looked at the Tan family members standing in the hall. He was curious about their reactions if they knew Sophia Tan was kidnapped, but his attention was mainly on Henry Tan. His son had done such a thing, could he truly be unaware? Elder Tu looked at everyone present, then said gravely, Sophia has been kidnapped. After saying this, Elder Tu seemed to age a decade, his face haggard and filled with sorrow. Upon hearing that Sophia Tan had been kidnapped, the villa's hall erupted like a pot of boiling oil splashed with water. What? Sophia's been kidnapped? How could this happen? Who did this? Everyone seemed unreliable, but those present, except Henry Tan, were all talking amongst themselves. Uncle, what are your thoughts on Sophia's kidnapping? Ethan Tanner asked Henry Tan, his expression impassive. Thoughts? Of course, we must do everything to ensure Sophia's safety and rescue her. Henry Tan, taken aback by Ethan Tanner's question, paused for a moment before resolutely stating his intent to rescue Sophia Tan, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. Yes, Uncle is right. Before I arrived, the kidnapper made a demand. He said if we pay 1,000 billion in ransom, he'll release Sophia. What? 1,000 billion? He might as well rob us blind. Tumi's shrill voice rang out as soon as Ethan Tanner finished speaking, her face filled with indignation. 1,000 billion, even for the Tan family, was no small sum. If they suddenly lost that much capital, many of their businesses would face bankruptcy or cease operations. Their losses would far exceed 1,000 billion. No, we can't agree to 1,000 billion. Tumi immediately vetoed, a hint of glee in her heart. Sophia Tan had always been better than her since childhood. Living in the same family, she couldn't compare to Sophia in anything. Sophia always had a share of the good things. Sometimes, even when they worked on the same task, the glory belonged to Sophia, while she was left forgotten in a nameless corner, unnoticed. Thus, she had lived under Sophia Tan's shadow since childhood, never receiving praise no matter how well she performed. Deep down, she wished Sophia would disappear, even fantasizing that if Sophia were gone, everything of hers would belong to her, to me. She blamed Sophia Tan for all her misfortunes, so now, upon hearing of Sophia's kidnapping, a strange sense of relief washed over her. Are you suggesting we abandon Sophia? Ethan Tanner's voice turned icy, a flash of killing intent appearing and disappearing. Even so, everyone present felt a chill down their spines. Those in the Tan family who had wanted to echo Tumi's words wisely kept their mouths shut. Before he entered, Tumi had made insinuations, which Ethan Tanner could ignore. But now, with Sophia Tan involved, and her audacity to chime in, Ethan Tanner's anger was inevitable. Now that he considered Sophia Tan his woman, harming her or her family was like touching his reverse scale. Anyone who dared, even the most powerful figure in the underworld, would face his wrath. Ah! Tumi screamed, her face pale as she collapsed, her previous arrogance gone. Her lips turned slightly blue, her body trembling as she sat on the ground, not daring to even glance at Ethan Tanner. Do any of you have any further objections? Ethan Tanner's voice echoed through the villa. Who would dare object now? Those present exchanged glances, silent, yet inwardly seething with resentment, wishing they could hang Ethan Tanner upside down and flog him. Objections? What bloody objections? We have them, all right, but would we dare voice them? Wouldn't that be daft? Liam Tan looked at Ethan Tanner with a hint of amusement in his eyes, but the thought of Sophia Tan's ordeal wiped the smile away. He had summoned Ethan Tanner here partly to subdue these individuals. Now that Ethan Tanner had finally revealed his sharp edge, those who had previously held objections, dismissing him as a kept man, fell silent. Sophia Tan's three uncles looked at Ethan Tanner with different eyes, their inner turmoil belying their outward composure. Chapter 39, Wolf's Fawn. Ethan Tanner was not a simple man. This realization dawned on them. It seemed they had all underestimated their father. To secure Sophia Tan's position in the Tan Corporation, the old man had clearly pulled out all the stops. Since no one has any objections, listen to me. Ethan Tanner spoke with an undeniable air of authority, his gaze sweeping across the room. Danielle Chase, you can now tell us everything you know. Ethan Tanner turned to Danielle Chase, who was lying on the ground. The others also looked at him curiously, wondering if Sophia Tan's kidnapping was connected to him. Hearing Ethan Tanner address him, Danielle Chase flinched. Danielle Chase didn't waste any words, recounting everything he knew. Dr. Chu, you can eat whatever you like, but you can't just spout nonsense. You say Alexander White sought you out. Do you have any proof? Hearing Alexander White's name mentioned again, Henry Tan felt uneasy and interrupted Danielle Chase. Ethan Tanner glanced at him before saying, continue. Danielle Chase naturally didn't dare disobey Ethan Tanner and continued, today, on the hospital rooftop, Alexander White approached me again. He told me to lure Ethan Tanner away from Miss Tan, and then, well, this happened. Slander. Absolute slander. Father, don't believe Danielle Chase's lies. Alexander has always considered himself part of the Ta family. Why would he do such a thing to Sophia? Henry Tan positioned Alexander White as a member of the Ta family and began explaining to Liam Tan, his hands slick with sweat. Liam Tan sat in his chair, listening to Danielle Chase's account implicating Alexander White. His face was cold. He should have known his return wouldn't be so simple. He had banished Alexander White from the Ta family and sent him to America years ago precisely because of Sophia Tan. Was his return now an act of revenge? The others remained silent, watching Henry Tan's explanation. To Ho and to Da frowned in contemplation, knowing Danielle Chase had no reason to lie. If he was telling the truth, what would become of their interests? Ring ring. The phone in the villa suddenly rang, drawing everyone's attention to the device beside Liam Tan. A call at this sensitive moment couldn't help but arouse suspicion. "Hello, who is this?" Elder Tan answered, his aged voice slightly hoarse, betraying his anxiety. "Grandfather? You must already know, right?" Alexander White's voice came from the other end, laced with a hint of amusement. He clearly anticipated Liam Tan's knowledge of his involvement in Sophia Tan's kidnapping. "Alexander, it really was you." Liam Tan roared furiously, leaping to his feet, his face flushed with rage. "Huh, are you really that surprised?" Alexander White chuckled, his tone condescending, as if his actions were justified. Liam Tan's outburst, angrily shouting Alexander White's name, shocked everyone in the hall. They hadn't expected Alexander White to be the one behind Sophia Tan's abduction. Impossible. Could it really be Brother Alexander? What's going on? Why would Brother Alexander do such a thing? Good heavens, what is happening? Murmurs filled the hall. Henry Tan sat pale-faced on the floor. While he suspected his son's involvement, he hadn't anticipated Alexander White's brazen confession to Elder Tan. "If I'm not mistaken, you've decided to mobilize 1,000 billion, haven't you?" Alexander White's voice turned dark, then erupted into a furious growl. "I truly don't understand. Sophia Tan has no blood ties to our Tan family. Why would you consider everything for her, even handing over the entire Tan family's enterprise to a complete stranger, unrelated to our family? Why? Why?" Liam Tan remained silent, listening to Alexander White's voice, hearing the years of suppressed resentment. He felt a pang of heartache. He had banished Alexander White from the Tan family years ago for accidentally discovering information about Sophia Tan's true identity hidden in Liam's room. To ensure secrecy, Liam had sent Alexander White abroad. Although Alexander was only 4 years old at the time, Liam had hoped time would erase the memory. He never imagined that 20 years later, Alexander would return to Hoaha, return to the Tan family, seeking revenge. They didn't realize that without Sophia Tan, the Tan family would never have achieved its current prosperity. "Alright, I know you don't really want 1,000 billion. You just want to reclaim what you believe is rightfully yours. All you need to do now is immediately draft a contract, listing me as the first heir to the Tan family, and sign it." Alexander White stated his demand. Liam Tan firmly refused, "Absolutely not. Make another demand. Sophia is my first heir, and that will not change." Oh. One sentence stirred up a storm. Hearing Liam Tan's words, those present could roughly guess what Alexander White was saying on the other end of the line. He wanted the position of the first heir of the Tan family, the Tan Corporation. Did he intend to reclaim everything that belonged to him? Normally, if Alexander White hadn't been expelled from the Tan family and emigrated to the U.S., the first heir of the Tan family and the Tan Corporation would certainly not be Sophia Tan, but him. Why? Is she your granddaughter or am I your grandson? Why are you always like this? In your eyes, am I even less than someone with no blood relation to the Tan family? As soon as Elder Tan finished speaking, Alexander White's almost out-of-control voice came from the other end of the line. He roared furiously like a mad bull, his tone indescribably sharp. Humph. The sound of Alexander White taking a deep breath came from the other end of the line. Then his tone returned to its previous calmness, but Elder Tan heard a clear threat in his words. Alexander White spoke, "It's up to you. Since you value this woman with no Tan family blood so much, you must care about her a lot. I have no other requests. Either draw up a contract and sign it, or your precious granddaughter won't see the sun tomorrow." Hearing this, Liam Tan's face immediately changed. He hurriedly said, "Alexander, don't be impulsive. We can negotiate." Elder Tan's tone softened a bit. He was truly afraid. If Sophia Tan was really harmed by Alexander White, the Tan family could be said to be truly ruined. He still remembered Tim Tanner's words when he brought Sophia Tan here. He entrusted Sophia Tan to him and promised to help the Tan family develop in a short time, but his requirement was that after Sophia Tan grew up, the Tan Corporation had to be handed over to her. When leaving, Tim Tanner left a sentence, "Remember, I can help your Tan family develop, and I can also make your Tan family perish." He had never forgotten these words. Liam Tan's face became indecisive. He looked towards Ethan Tanner. At this moment, perhaps only Ethan Tanner had a solution, because he was the one Tim Tanner left behind to protect Sophia Tan. Ethan Tanner made a gesture to continue stalling. Then he took out his mobile phone, entered a series of numbers, and shortly after the call connected, Ethan Tanner walked out of the villa to the door and said, "Little Black, are you there?" Hearing Ethan Tanner's voice, the other end of the line immediately became excited, and a voice said, "Ah, Brother Fong, is that you? Do you know how much we missed you after you left? I've lost a few pounds." Hearing this, a warm smile appeared on Ethan Tanner's face, and he said affectionately, "All right, stop talking nonsense. I need your help with something now. Help me track the specific location of a phone number." After speaking, Ethan Tanner told the person on the other end of the line, named Little Black, the Tan family's landline number. Little Black responded, and Ethan Tanner heard the continuous sound of keyboard typing from the other end. Not long after, there was a reply. "Brother Fong, I found the location you wanted me to track. It's in a villa 2 kilometers from your current location. But his position is currently moving slowly. Alright, Q Hack, keep tracking his location and update me on any route changes." Chapter 40, Rescue. Ethan Tanner hung up, walked outside, got into his black car, and followed the route Q Hack provided. Driving along the highway, taking a few turns, he arrived at the villa Q Hack mentioned. A cold smile played on Ethan Tanner's lips. Alexander White was audacious, yet cunning, hiding so close to the Tan family's territory. Instead of getting out immediately, Ethan Tanner called Q Hack, "What's the situation? Is he still in the villa?" "He's gone. I think he suspected something and ditched the phone. I anticipated this and tracked other electronic devices on him. He's left the villa and is heading towards the outskirts." As expected, after hearing from Q Hack, Ethan Tanner spotted a discarded phone in the nearby grass. Getting back in his car, he said, "Okay, Q Hack, let's stay on the line. Keep me updated on his location." 15 minutes later, Ethan Tanner's car stopped at an abandoned factory on the outskirts. Another black car was parked ahead, headlights still on, with occasional female screams emanating from within. "Q Hack, are you sure he's in that abandoned factory?" Ethan Tanner asked gravely, getting out of his car, parking 100 meters behind the other vehicle, and turning off the engine. His figure blended into the pitch-black night. Several hours had passed since Sophia Tan's abduction. The sun had long set, and the moon was gradually rising. Without alerting anyone in the other car, Ethan Tanner slipped into the factory. Lights were on inside. Like a nimble wildcat in the darkness, he silently moved towards the illuminated area. "Damn, that chick is fine. Too bad the boss won't let us touch her." Hiding beneath a staircase, Ethan Tanner overheard 2 guards in green camouflage talking. Another voice spoke with apprehension, "Bloody hell, are you tired of living? The boss said we can't touch her. You know what he's capable of. Hearing his companion's words, the first guard recoiled, clearly having only entertained the thought. Thump. Ethan Tanner suddenly appeared behind them, his hand striking like a blade against one guard's neck, knocking him unconscious. He then gagged the other and coldly asked, "Where's the woman you were talking about?" The guard was stubborn, refusing to speak even under Ethan Tanner's hold. But Ethan Tanner was in no mood for games. He punched the guard in the stomach. "You can choose to stay silent, but I can't guarantee the next punch won't kill you." Sensing the killing intent emanating from Ethan Tanner, the guard's heart pounded. They were part of a small, nameless mercenary group in China, hired by Alexander White for this job. Every man in their mercenary squad had killed before, so naturally, they were no strangers to murderous intent. Sensing the chilling aura around Ethan Tanner, he didn't doubt for a second that this man would kill him on the spot. He hastily nodded. While mercenaries were daredevils, it didn't mean they didn't value their lives. In fact, people like them cherished their lives even more. "Speak." Ethan Tanner coldly uttered a single word, releasing the man's name from his lips. This time, the man cooperated fully, not daring to spout any nonsense. He directly revealed how many men were present, where Sophia Tan was being held, and what weapons they possessed. With a thud, Ethan Tanner knocked the man unconscious. Following the information extracted from the mercenary, he began to scout the factory. According to the man, their mercenary group consisted of about 50 men, patrolling the first and second floors of the entire factory. Sophia Tan was being held on the second floor, guarded by Hank Stone, the mercenary captain, and the person who hired them. Thud. Along the way, Ethan Tanner knocked unconscious everyone he encountered. He didn't kill anyone, after all, this was China. Ethan Tanner stealthily reached the factory's second floor. Sure enough, he saw Sophia Tan there, tied to a chair, her mouth sealed with duct tape, unable to speak. She was awake, her eyes filled with anger as she glared at Alexander White, who sat opposite her. She never would have dreamed that Alexander White would kidnap her. Furthermore, he told her she wasn't part of the Tu family. How could that be? That was her first reaction. Seeing her disbelief, Alexander White asked, "You claim to be a Tu, so tell me, who are your parents?" "I don't recall any fourth uncle after my father, second uncle, and third uncle." Alexander White looked at her with a sneer. Sophia Tan's face suddenly paled. She had considered this question before, but Liam Tan had told her that her father had died before she was born, and her mother died during childbirth. Afterward, she didn't know why she hadn't asked Liam Tan about this again. As time passed, she'd almost forgotten about it, or perhaps she deliberately avoided thinking about it. Now, with Alexander White bringing it up again, she couldn't help but wonder if she truly wasn't a member of the Tu family. Her mind went blank. Alexander White raged, "It's all your fault. Everything that belonged to me in the Tu family was taken by him. Now, I'm going to take back everything that's his. I'll kick you out of the Tu family and make you taste what it's like to be cast out." From Alexander White's words, she also learned that when he was only 4 years old, Liam Tan had driven him out of the Tu family and forced him to move to America because of her identity. He had been separated from his parents since childhood, and his mother, unable to bear the pain of missing him, later moved to America to live with him. In this brightly lit open space, besides Alexander White and Hank Stone, there were dozens of other men. Just as Ethan Tanner was figuring out how to deal with them, Alexander White stood up. Clap clap. "Tanner, you truly have impressive skills. So many men downstairs, and you took them down silently." Hearing this, Ethan Tanner's heart jolted. Was he discovered? What was going on? He had been extremely cautious along the way, hadn't seen any cameras, yet the man's tone confirmed his discovery. So, he stepped out from his hiding spot, appearing before everyone. Being discovered meant hiding was pointless, only adding to the mockery. Seeing Ethan Tanner emerge from the hallway, Sophia Tan, tied to the chair, widened her eyes in disbelief. She couldn't believe Ethan Tanner was the first to come for her. She had imagined countless rescue scenarios. Yet, she never expected Ethan Tanner to be the first. Tears welled up in her eyes. His appearance brought immense comfort. Now, even if it meant facing a mountain of blades or a sea of fire, she had the courage to charge forward. In the eyes of a lover, who wouldn't wish for their beloved to be the first to appear during a crisis? Even if there's no hope, it brings some comfort. Immediately, the joy in Sophia Tan's eyes turned to worry. Ethan Tanner was alone, while there were over a dozen men here, especially the man named Hank Stone beside Alexander White, who seemed even more formidable. She had witnessed him pulverize a falling cement block with a single punch. Heh. Seemingly noticing Sophia Tan's worry for him, Ethan Tanner grinned at her and said, "Don't worry, my dear. These are just small fry. I'll handle them in a flash." Humph. Such big talk from such a young whippersnapper. Get him, men. The muscular man beside Alexander White sneered at Ethan Tanner. He wore a tight black tank top, a bear paw tattooed on his right arm. This was Hank Stone, captain of the Iron Bear mercenaries. As soon as he gave the order, over a dozen mercenaries under his command charged forward, giving Ethan Tanner no chance to escape. Seeing his escape route blocked, Ethan Tanner showed no worry. Instead, he smiled and asked Alexander White, "I'm curious. How did you discover me?" Alexander White pointed to a nearby display screen. Judging by the electronic light, it was a military-grade thermal imaging display. Within its detection range, any approaching heat source would be detected. Humph. It seems you're truly meticulous, even bringing out a thermal imaging display for this kidnapping. Seeing the thermal display, Ethan Tanner's doubts were cleared. In this situation, he didn't resent being discovered. What puzzled him was why Alexander White, after knowing he was coming, didn't send anyone to assist those downstairs or warn them of an intruder, but instead let him come straight here. Could he have another powerful trump card? Ethan Tanner felt a sense of caution. Alexander White's meticulous planning suggested he wasn't a fool or arrogant. He must have a trump card. Do it. Without giving Ethan Tanner much time to breathe, Hank Stone barked an order, then led the charge towards the surrounded Ethan Tanner. Hashtag Chapter 41, Jace Harms, Die. Hank Stone was incredibly fast. The dozen or so meters between them vanished in a blink as he lunged at Ethan Tanner. As the leader of a mercenary group, albeit a small one, he knew his way around a fight. Whoosh! Hank Stone's fist, whistling through the air, slammed towards Ethan Tanner's face. He'd been a mercenary in the underworld, only leaving that chaotic arena after an injury. Returning to China, adapting to the rules of a lawful society proved difficult. So, he decided to form a mercenary group in China. It wouldn't be the same as the underworld, operating only within China's borders, but it was enough. Mercenary work was about freedom. After several years of struggle, he'd finally gained a foothold in China, gathering a band of loyal followers. Truthfully, they were little more than a gang, but he insisted on calling them the Iron Bear Mercenary Group. Not bad, but not fast enough. Ethan Tanner let out a strange laugh, shifting his stance. Planting his right foot, he slid his left back half a step, then effortlessly deflected Hank Stone's fist, using its momentum to redirect the blow. The exchange happened in the blink of an eye, too fast for the others to react. But Alexander White, seated in his chair, narrowed his eyes. His gaze on Ethan Tanner shifted, though his expression remained calm and composed. Even with Ethan Tanner's unexpected display, he remained confident in his own plans. Ethan Tanner couldn't cause any real trouble. Hank Stone also sensed that Ethan Tanner wasn't ordinary. His punch hadn't been a casual blow. It was a technique he'd learned during his time in the underworld mercenary circles, called chasing wind. True to its name, the technique prioritized speed. It was best suited for assassinations, but he was confident that few could withstand it in a straight fight, except perhaps seasoned soldiers. His attack easily parried, Hank Stone didn't rush his next move. He began circling Ethan Tanner, seemingly searching for an opening. What? Not coming at me? Then it's my turn. With that, Ethan Tanner struck, giving Hank Stone no chance to react. Bam! Ethan Tanner's fist connected with Hank Stone's stomach. A surge of force, like a crushing weight, erupted within him. Hank Stone gasped, his eyes widening. He'd heard of this technique somewhere before. Bam! Pressing his advantage, Ethan Tanner followed up with a kick to Hank Stone's gut. The man, built like a small mountain, flew backward under the shocked gazes of the onlookers, crashing hard against the wall. Pfft! A mouthful of blood sprayed out. Hank Stone's face paled, disbelief filling his eyes. Feeling his insides churn, he remembered the rumors he'd heard during his underworld days. In the underworld, countless organizations and lone wolves roam. Those lacking the strength to protect themselves naturally seek shelter within an organization, even if it means being cannon fodder. It offers a better chance of survival, at least sparing them the worry of being killed the moment they step outside. But those with formidable power, those who transcend the mundane and reach a higher realm, disdain joining any organization that might bind them. The underworld's greatest allure is freedom, provided, of course, you possess the strength to survive. That legend belongs to an icon of the underground mercenary world, Wolf Fong. He'd only ever heard of one technique capable of delivering such monstrous force with a single punch, Wolf Fong's signature move, Wolf Howl. A wave of shock washed over him. Could this man before him be one of Wolf Fong's own? He stared in terror at Ethan Tanner approaching, his finger trembling as he stammered, You're with Wolf Fong. Ha. Didn't expect you to know about the underworld's affairs. Ethan Tanner paused, then chuckled softly. Bitterness twisted Hank Stone's lips. He never imagined this mission would lead him to a clash with one of the underworld's mercenary overlords, Wolf Fong. What cruel twist of fate was this? He'd thought he'd struck gold when Alexander White made the offer. Now, just surviving seemed like a blessing. Alexander White's face paled, his initial confidence crumbling upon hearing that Ethan Tanner belonged to Wolf Fong. Wolf Fong. He couldn't believe Ethan Tanner was part of Wolf Fong. That explained everything. His investigation into Ethan Tanner's past had hit a dead end after his time at the orphanage, a blank slate until his recent reappearance. He'd assumed Ethan Tanner had fled overseas, seeking refuge in some remote village. He never imagined he'd joined Wolf Fong, one of the underworld's most elite mercenary groups. Clap, clap. Alexander White clapped again, but this time, the disdain on his face was replaced by a look of grave seriousness. As a top-tier organization in the underworld, Wolf Fong was naturally different from ordinary mercenary groups. Despite their elite status, Wolf Fong's numbers were small. Just 9 squads, 12 members each, totaling a little over 100, a mere fraction compared to other large mercenary groups. But every single one of those 100-plus members was a seasoned veteran, not a single rookie among them. Back before Wolf Fong achieved its current notoriety, they clashed with a 1,000-strong mercenary group in the underworld. Back then, they only had 5 squads, just over 50 men. Yet, they stormed into that 1,000-strong group, killed their leader, and slaughtered hundreds more before leaving. Though they suffered heavy losses, the name Wolf Fong echoed through the underworld from that day forward. They rose from an obscure, small-time outfit to a top-tier organization, their numbers doubling from 50 to over 100. No one in the underworld dared question their fighting prowess. As for whether they had more members hidden in the shadows, only they knew. Wolf Fong's people are indeed formidable. But one man alone seems insufficient, wouldn't you say? Alexander White sneered, a chilling smile playing on his lips. As his clapping ceased, dozens of figures emerged from the factory's darkened corridors. Ethan Tanner's gaze hardened at the sight of these newcomers. He sensed a dangerous aura emanating from them, these dozen or so blonde-haired, blue-eyed men. They weren't Chinese, but foreigners. After emerging, they said nothing, immediately fixing their gaze on Ethan Tanner. Their leader spoke in broken Chinese, "Let us experience the fighting prowess of Wolf Fang." Ethan Tanner stood there silently, his brows furrowed. Just from the appearance of these foreigners, he knew Alexander White was definitely not a simple man. His first impression was that Alexander White was complex, but now he felt the person behind him was even more so. The one controlling these foreigners was absolutely not Alexander White, as they hadn't even glanced at him since their arrival. Their eyes were locked on Ethan Tanner from the start. "Humph, you're not enough," Ethan Tanner said arrogantly, but inwardly, he heightened his vigilance. These men were definitely cold-blooded killers, a different breed from the small-time thugs and Hank Stone he'd faced before. "Fuck." Hearing Ethan Tanner's dismissive tone, the lead foreigner cursed and charged, his speed eclipsing Hank Stone's by an immeasurable degree. They weren't even on the same level. Boom! Fists collided, and both Ethan Tanner and the foreigner staggered back a step. Ethan Tanner had used 6/10 of his strength, while the foreigner, he estimated, had used 7. Both were merely testing the other's capabilities. In terms of raw power, Ethan Tanner might have a slight edge, but killing wasn't about brute force, it was about technique. "Come here, you yellow-skinned earthworm." Abroad, due to their skin color, Chinese people were often derisively called yellow-skinned earthworms. Ethan Tanner's face darkened. Once, when someone from another organization called him a yellow-skinned earthworm, he'd flown into a rage, leading his 11-man squad to annihilate the entire organization, slaughtering over 200 people. From then on, no one dared call him a yellow-skinned earthworm again. Ethan Tanner surged forward, appearing before the Westerner in a blink. His fist, accompanied by a wolf's howl, struck the man's chest. This was clearly one of Wolf Fang's signature moves, Wolf Howl. Ethan Tanner was fast, but the Westerner wasn't slow. He'd braced for the attack, yet he'd underestimated Ethan Tanner's power, or more accurately, the force of the Wolf Howl. Boom! Scrape, scrape, he stumbled back several steps before regaining his footing. A searing pain shot through his arm, making him feel as if his bones had shattered. Yet, his face showed no sign of pain. Instead, a savage grin spread across his lips. He bared his teeth and said, "Good, you're indeed worthy of Wolf Fang. Now you have the right to know my name. I am Jace Harms." Roar! The muscles in Jace Harms' arms bulged like writhing earthworms, a gruesome sight. With a roar, he charged towards Ethan Tanner like an enraged rhinoceros. Ethan Tanner's aura shifted, a wave of killing intent radiating outwards. His presence intensified, creating the illusion of invincibility. #### Chapter 42, Azure Pharmaceuticals. Bang! Bang! The two fought fiercely, the sounds of clashing limbs echoing intermittently. Their speed was blinding. What appeared to be a single kick to an observer was, in reality, dozens of punches and blocks exchanged in the blink of an eye. Sophia Tan watched Ethan Tanner and Jace Harms battle under the lights, her heart leaping into her throat every time Ethan seemed about to be hit. Relief washed over her each time he narrowly avoided a blow. Alexander White frowned. Jace Harms' inability to quickly subdue Ethan Tanner was troubling, especially since Ethan seemed to be gaining the upper hand, landing a solid punch or kick for every 3 moves exchanged. Jace Harms, on the other hand, struggled to gain any advantage even after 5 exchanges. At this rate, his defeat at Ethan Tanner's hands seemed inevitable. "Hurry up, all of you, attack him together. Seize him." Bam! Bam! Ethan Tanner punched Jace Harms in the chest, receiving a simultaneous blow to his own chest in return. They separated, Ethan's chest heaving slightly from the exertion. Despite the effort, a smirk played on his lips. The Westerner, Jace Harms, looked far worse. As Ethan looked up, he saw Jace Harms' face, pale and strained. The man's tank top had been ripped off, revealing powerful arms and intimidating muscles. But the beauty of those muscles was marred by dark bruises. A cut near Jace's eye, courtesy of one of Ethan's punches, oozed blood. Jace Harms gasped for breath, his earlier composure gone. Alexander White's words ignited a furious outburst. "Damn it! Alexander White, shut your mouth." His eyes burned red with rage, his breathing heavy and labored. How dare this fool doubt him? He turned to his dozen or so henchmen and barked in Chinese, "Wait. Without my order, no one interferes. Just watch that yellow-skinned worm." After issuing the command, he specifically instructed his men to keep an eye on Alexander White, preventing any rash actions. He craved this fight. Wolf Fong. He could still win. He was the strongest. Alexander White's face darkened as Jace Harms insisted on continuing the one-on-one fight, forbidding any interference. These Western devils are all so arrogant, he thought, cursing inwardly. Powerless, he edged closer to Sophia Tan. She was his lifeline, he couldn't allow anything else to go wrong. Ethan Tanner found Jace Harms' behavior comical. This foreigner is truly a joke, he mused. His mind raced. He hadn't forgotten his mission, to rescue Sophia Tan, not engage in a pointless brawl with this man. "You are strong," Jace Harms said, his expression turning serious as he looked at Ethan Tanner. "I will respond with my full strength next. I hope you won't disappoint me." He couldn't deny Ethan's strength. Without resorting to other methods, he wasn't a match for him. But if he did, the outcome was far from certain. Wham! Jace Harms pulled a pinky-sized vial filled with azure liquid from his pocket. His face twisted into a ferocious snarl as he glared at Ethan Tanner, then snapped the vial's top with his thumb, creating an opening. He poured the blue liquid into his mouth. His aura instantly shifted, becoming so violently savage that any trace of humanity vanished. He now resembled a heartless beast, his eyes glowing with a faint blue light. "Roar!" Jace Harms roared, his eyes devoid of emotion as he charged towards Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner's face hardened as he watched Jace Harms approach. He'd known things would take a turn for the worse the moment Jace had produced the blue vial. But only after Jace swallowed the contents did Ethan realize he'd underestimated the drug's potency. The potion was a product of cutting-edge genetic engineering. Scientists had developed drugs capable of temporarily amplifying a person's strength and potential, essentially wringing out the deepest reserves of the human body. It was like the mystical elixirs of fantasy novels, though not quite as miraculously effective. Wolf Fong possessed a specially formulated potion called Blood Portion. Ingesting it granted a temporary, several-fold increase in strength, but it was a last resort. While these potions boasted incredible effects, their side effects were equally terrifying, effectively draining the user's life force. Ethan Tanner didn't know the exact potency of Jace Harms' blue vial, but he knew that once its effects wore off, the only immediate threat to him would be gone. He disregarded Jace's dozen or so subordinates. Unless each of them also had a vial, Ethan Tanner would simply bolt. But that was wishful thinking. Potions weren't cabbage, even Wolf Fong only equipped each member with a single dose of Blood Portion. Ethan Tanner wouldn't believe they all had one, not even if they swore on their mother's graves. Crash! Jace Harms, now a human maglev train at full speed, moved with a velocity far exceeding his previous capabilities. Ethan Tanner, caught off guard, was knocked back several steps by a powerful punch. A dull ache throbbed in his chest as he exhaled sharply. Jace Harms, post-potion, was proving to be a bit of a problem. Just a bit, though. Ethan Tanner shrugged off his jacket, a gift from Sophia Tan to celebrate his hospital discharge. They'd planned a celebratory dinner. Instead, this mess had unfolded, with Sophia Tan kidnapped, all thanks to that bastard Alexander White. Ethan Tanner shot him a venomous glance before turning his attention back to Jace Harms, his expression grim. Now, fueled by the blue potion, Jace's strength, speed, and reflexes were dramatically enhanced. Overpowering him as before was clearly impossible. Ethan needed to conserve his energy for Alexander White, so he couldn't afford to expend everything on Jace Harms. Stall him. Ethan Tanner had a plan: keep Jace Harms occupied until the blue liquid's effects wore off, regaining the advantage. Dodging and defending wouldn't drain much stamina. Bang! Bang! Jace Harms wasn't thinking clearly. Consumed by frenzy, his sole focus was Ethan Tanner, tearing him apart. His fists rained down on Ethan Tanner, forcing him into a defensive stance. Feeling the immense force against his arms, Ethan Tanner groaned inwardly. He'd underestimated the potion Jace Harms had taken. Its effects seemed to push him towards a higher realm of power, but his lack of consciousness made him unstable. Boom! Thud! After blocking one of Jace Harms' punches, Ethan Tanner stumbled back several steps. He couldn't remain passive. Jace Harms' speed made dodging impossible, leaving him no choice but to absorb the blows. Tied to a chair, Sophia Tan watched Jace Harms' sudden aggression overwhelm Ethan Tanner. Her heart plummeted. She wasn't worried for her own safety, but for Ethan Tanner's ability to withstand the onslaught. The situation had reversed. Almost every one of Jace Harms' punches landed, while Ethan Tanner couldn't reciprocate. Bang! Jace Harms punched Ethan Tanner in the chest. Ethan Tanner retaliated with a palm strike to Jace Harms' back. Staggering back, Ethan Tanner spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. Jace Harms, however, seemed unfazed by Ethan Tanner's strike. He wasn't even breathing hard. His eyes still glowed with a hazy blue light, though fainter than before, indicating the potion was wearing off. Screech! Screech! Sophia Tan struggled against her restraints. The chair scraped against the floor with each movement. Tears streamed down her face as she watched Ethan Tanner cough up blood, each drop feeling like a knife to her heart. Pain shot through Ethan Tanner. His breath came in ragged gasps. The blood he'd spat wasn't from a serious injury, he'd mostly forced it out. He was playing a part, deceiving everyone present, to create an opening to rescue Sophia Tan. Ethan Tanner appeared increasingly overwhelmed, barely able to defend himself against Jace Harms. He narrowly dodged attacks, or shielded vital points, taking the blows elsewhere. Watching Sophia Tan's tears, Alexander White felt a surge of vengeful satisfaction. Ever since he was a child, hearing his mother's stories of Liam Tan's kindness towards Sophia Tan had filled him with resentment. For over a decade, he'd plotted his revenge. Soon, everything she'd stolen, the entire Tan family fortune, would be his. Chapter 43 Victor Wolf. Damn it, why is this drug still working? Continuously beaten, Ethan Tanner only felt a tightness in his chest, a burning rage threatening to consume him. This wasn't some play acting, this was his body taking real blows. Bam! Jace Holmes' fist slammed into the ground with a thud, a trickle of blood welling up from his knuckles. Ethan Tanner rolled away just in time, but a flicker of joy crossed his face as he saw a grimace of pain on Jace Holmes' face. The drug was finally wearing off. Another 5 minutes passed. Finally, the blue in Jace Holmes' eyes faded completely. Ethan Tanner breathed a sigh of relief. His turn. Ethan Tanner pushed himself up from the ground, a wave of frustration washing over him as he remembered rolling around in the dirt in front of Sophia Tan. As the blue faded from Jace Holmes' eyes, a sudden weakness washed over him, nearly sending him to the ground. The fun's just starting. Bam! Ethan Tanner let out a laugh and kicked Jace Holmes hard. Jace Holmes, already weakened, went flying, his body tumbling across the ground. Crash! Come on, hit me. Ethan Tanner grabbed Jace Holmes by the collar, yanking him up before delivering a brutal punch to his eye. The force of the blow sent a spray of blood into the air, a gruesome spectacle. But Ethan Tanner wasn't about to let him go. He'd been on the receiving end of that old man's fists for far too long. Payback was a dish best served cold. Another punch landed squarely in Jace Holmes' gut. Jace Holmes' eyes bulged. The searing pain in his stomach was excruciating, but Ethan Tanner didn't care. He was like a street brawler, lost in the frenzy of the fight. Jace Holmes lay curled up on the ground as Ethan Tanner continued to rain down blows, muttering under his breath. Bastard! Get up and fight me. Damn it! Weren't you so cocky before? Son of a bitch! Think you're tough because you're a foreigner. You piece of shit. Sophia Tan, who had been terrified for Ethan Tanner just moments before, now silently turned her face to the sky, watching Ethan Tanner's frenzied attack and listening to his curses. Bam! Ethan Tanner knocked Jace Holmes unconscious with a final kick and rushed to Sophia Tan's side. It all happened so fast that even Alexander White couldn't react. He'd thought it was over for Ethan Tanner, but the tables had turned dramatically. Rip! Ethan Tanner ripped the tape from Sophia Tan's mouth and untied her, his voice filled with concern. Sophia, are you all right? Are you okay? He didn't call her wife as he usually did, but instead, a worried Sophia slipped out. He didn't even notice the change, but to Sophia Tan, it was the sweetest sound in the world. Her heart was filled with Ethan Tanner, leaving no room for anyone else. Ethan Tanner, be careful. Just as she was about to say she was fine, the words on the tip of her tongue changed to a warning, because she saw behind Ethan Tanner, Alexander White holding a gleaming knife, lunging towards him. Get lost! Ethan Tanner roared, spinning around and delivering a roundhouse kick to Alexander White's stomach, sending him crashing into the wall. His head tilted to the side, and he passed out. The knife in his hand clattered to the floor. More than a dozen other Westerners surged forward, clearly under orders to prevent Sophia Tan's escape at all costs. Even though their leader was unconscious, they knew what to do. Kid, I gotta admit, you're tough. Even Jace couldn't take you down. But after such a long fight, how much strength do you have left? Besides, we've got 14 men now. One of the taller Westerners, looking at Ethan Tanner, spoke. He stated the facts, but upon hearing them, a contemptuous smile played on Ethan Tanner's lips. I've already said, you're not enough to deal with. Me. But I'm curious, which nation's forces are you, or which organization do you belong to, that you dare to stick your noses into China's business? Humph. You talk too much. The man grunted, clearly not wanting to waste words on Ethan Tanner. He pulled out a dagger, and the remaining 13 men followed suit. Holding their gleaming daggers, they slowly advanced towards Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan. Ethan Tanner kicked up the dagger Alexander White had dropped, looked at the Westerners surrounding them, and turned to Sophia Tan. Close your eyes. Don't look. Don't open them until I tell you to. He planted a quick kiss on Sophia Tan's forehead, giving her no chance to speak, only adding, close your eyes. As Sophia Tan closed her eyes, Ethan Tanner's demeanor shifted, the air of injury vanishing, replaced by a sharp gaze and a ruthless smile. Holding the dagger, Ethan Tanner licked his dry lips and said, next up is a performance of the Symphony of Slaughter, Victor Wolf. What? The first man to speak felt a surge of unease at the words, Victor Wolf, but it was too late for warnings. He only had time to raise his dagger defensively before Ethan Tanner vanished. His footwork was uncanny, like a phantom passing through them, and then. Clang! The sound of clashing metal rang in his ears, a powerful force transmitted from the dagger in his hand to his wrist, the impact so strong it almost made him lose his grip. Before he could comprehend what had happened, Ethan Tanner was back in his original position, smiling at him. Thud. Suddenly, the remaining men surrounding Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan collapsed, each with a deep gash across their throats, their carotid arteries severed. Their faces were frozen in their final expressions, dying without knowing what hit them. Soon, only pools of blood remained. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the thick, coppery scent of blood that made Sophia Tan nauseous, but she kept her eyes closed, remembering Ethan Tanner's words. He hadn't told her to open them, so she wouldn't. So, is this another Wolf Fong secret technique? Victor Wolf? The Westerner, having reacted in time to avoid Ethan Tanner's fatal blow, spoke with a dry throat. Their boss knew about Wolf Fong, so naturally, they did too. Besides, outside of China, anyone with a bit of power likely knew of Wolf Fong. Heh, what do you say? Ethan Tanner chuckled, but a sweetness rose in his throat, a mouthful of blood nearly spurting out, which he forcefully swallowed. As a Wolf Fong secret technique, it naturally wouldn't be that simple. Victor Wolf and Wolf Howl are two completely different techniques. Within Wolf Fong, Wolf Howl is a force control skill, causing no bodily harm, but its training is the most arduous and demanding. As for Victor Wolf, it's a movement technique created by Wolf Fong. This movement technique is incredibly agile and extremely fast, often capable of taking down opponents before they can react. However, Victor Wolf places an immense burden on the body, primarily affecting the internal organs. There was once a Wolf Fong member who overused Victor Wolf, resulting in the rupture of his internal organs and ultimately, death. This demonstrates the physical requirements of Victor Wolf. First prosperity, second decline, third exhaustion. Ethan Tanner understood this principle. He had already forced down one mouthful of blood, and he absolutely couldn't let out this second one, or he feared he would immediately weaken. He didn't waste words, charging forward, dagger in hand. Since you know it's Wolf Fong's Victor Wolf, then prepare to die. Ethan Tanner roared, reaching the foreigner, raising his dagger to strike. His speed was so swift that it appeared as a mere flash of light. Clang! This strike against Ethan Tanner was blocked, but he wasn't surprised. He hadn't expected that one blow to kill his opponent. Ethan Tanner didn't stop, continuously attacking the foreigner. His speed increased, while the foreigner suffered a series of small cuts. Take another one of my blades. Ethan Tanner bellowed, the dagger in his hand gleaming coldly under the light. Hearing this, the foreigner's spirit wavered, his entire attention focused on Ethan Tanner's dagger. Thud. The foreigner's body flew backward. He looked at Ethan Tanner with disbelief, thinking, why did he punch? He said blade. A look of frustration crossed his face. He couldn't believe a master like Ethan Tanner would lie. But a strange force surged through his body, making his face pale, rendering him speechless. Ethan Tanner looked at the foreigner lying on the ground with a grin. What's wrong? Want to know why I didn't use my blade? Damn, you actually believe that? What an idiot. Hearing this, the foreigner spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been trying to suppress it, but Ethan Tanner's words pushed him over the edge. Then, he seemed to bite down on something in his mouth and tilted his head, dying. Only then did Ethan Tanner notice a tattoo on the back of his neck. It was a scorpion tattoo. #### Chapter 44 Subjugation. It was a purple scorpion. Ethan Tanner looked at the back of the necks of all those foreigners. They were all the same, all with a purple scorpion tattoo. What organization's mark is this? Ethan Tanner was a little doubtful. Usually, every organization has a special mark, proving that he is a member of that organization. In the underworld, he seemed to have never heard of any organization using a purple scorpion as their mark. Looks like I have to find time to ask Theo Grant, Ethan Tanner thought to himself. Phut, Ethan Tanner spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. After dealing with everyone, he finally couldn't hold back any longer. His face turned pale, and he knelt on one knee, hands on the ground. Hank Stone looked at Ethan Tanner kneeling on the ground, his eyes full of shock. Was this the fighting prowess of a top mercenary in the underworld? Moreover, he was alone. He'd heard that Wolf Fong wasn't good at individual combat, but rather at group actions. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the fighting strength of a Wolf Fong squad would be. His breathing gradually evened out. Ethan Tanner went in front of Sophia Tan, looked at the slightly trembling eyelashes on her closed eyes, and with a sly smile, kissed her small lips. Caught off guard by Ethan Tanner's attack, Sophia Tan couldn't react in time. Feeling his tongue forcefully part her teeth, invade her mouth, and passionately demand, she responded fervently. Earlier, witnessing Ethan Tanner being beaten until he vomited blood, she thought he would hardly survive. Only she understood the heart-wrenching pain at that moment. Finally, because Sophia Tan couldn't breathe anymore, Ethan Tanner reluctantly let go, smacking his lips, reminiscing about the sweet taste. Sophia Tan, whose face was already red, blushed even more and glared at him. Looking at Sophia Tan's playful appearance, Ethan Tanner was stunned. Since when did she have such a lovely expression? Before, she always wore a cold expression as if everyone owed her 200 dong. Of course, he only dared to think these words in his mind, not daring to say them out loud, otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. Your name is Hank Stone, right? Were you a mercenary before? Ethan Tanner shifted his attention to Hank Stone. He was a little curious. He didn't expect someone from a small force like Hoa to recognize Wolf Fong's wolf howl technique. Why yes, I used to roll around in the underworld, then retired due to injury, Hank Stone stammered. Wolf Fong was a legend among mercenaries. Back when he was in the underworld, he never thought he would meet someone from Wolf Fong, yet after returning to Hoa, he met them under these circumstances. Bitterness filled his heart. If he had known that this time's target was someone from Wolf Fong, he wouldn't have accepted the job no matter how much money they offered. But now, saying these things was too late. Everything depended on how Ethan Tanner decided to deal with them. Heh, where's your phone? What? Hank Stone was stunned, not understanding what Ethan Tanner wanted to do. His thoughts clearly jumped too quickly, making him unable to react. Get your phone out. Ethan Tanner was a little exasperated. Did this guy not understand human language? He'd asked for his phone, what was the hold-up? Yes. Hank Stone hastily pulled out his phone, a black iPhone 6, which annoyed Ethan Tanner a bit. Rich prick, everyone seemed to have an expensive iPhone 6 these days. Thinking about his own flip phone, Ethan Tanner felt embarrassed to take it out. This was the first phone he'd bought after arriving in Wind City, and it had one major advantage, excellent reception. Ethan Tanner punched a number into Hank Stone's phone and handed it back. This is my number. Call me when you're patched up. With that, Ethan Tanner was about to leave with Sophia Tan when he heard her call out. Ethan Tanner, it's bad. Alexander White's gotten away. Ethan Tanner turned to look. Sure enough, Alexander White, who had apparently regained consciousness at some point, was sneaking off. Look after my wife, he told Hank Stone before sprinting after the fleeing Alexander White. His stamina was nearly depleted, and he wasn't as fast as he'd been earlier, but he figured catching Alexander White wouldn't be too difficult. After exiting the abandoned factory, Ethan Tanner realized he'd underestimated the bastard Alexander White's speed. He'd seen his back just a moment ago, but now he'd vanished. Not good. Bang! A sense of danger surged through him. Ethan Tanner instantly rolled into the empty space beside him as a gunshot echoed through the night. The bullet grazed his shoulder, and cold sweat trickled down his back. If it weren't for his acutely honed sense of danger, he'd be a corpse right now. Irritation flared within him. He hadn't expected the bastard Alexander White to have a gun. It seemed he deliberately lured him out here to shoot him. As for why he hadn't used the gun back there, he was probably afraid of hitting Sophia Tan. He hadn't given up hope, he still wanted to use Sophia Tan to leverage Liam Tan. Heh, I didn't think you'd actually follow me out here. Well, now you die. Alexander White's voice drifted through the darkness to Ethan Tanner's ears, followed by a series of gunshots that shattered the night's silence. Whiz! Ethan Tanner dodged each bullet as it slammed into the ground. He rolled and scrambled, stubbornly refusing to let a single round hit him. Hidden in the shadows, Alexander White cursed inwardly. He hadn't expected Ethan Tanner to still be so agile after expending so much energy. Slapping in a fresh magazine, he continued firing at Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner was also cursing inwardly. How the hell was he supposed to fight this? The bastard Alexander White had pulled out a gun, and it seemed he had more than one magazine. A few bullets even whizzed past his groin, making Ethan Tanner almost cry out in terror. He was still a virgin. If his little Ethan Tanner met its end like this, his life would be over. He figured this was definitely the bastard Alexander White trying to freak him out, but it genuinely made Ethan Tanner afraid to approach him. Heh, Ethan Tanner, you're pretty good at dodging. Aren't you a wolf-fang mercenary? Why are you acting like a turtle now? Alexander White's voice dripped with amusement as he fired even faster at Ethan Tanner. Hearing Alexander White shamelessly call him out for a one-on-one fight, Ethan Tanner silently cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. He had a gun and was calling him, an unarmed man, to fight him. Could he be any more shameless? Scrambling out of the clearing, Ethan Tanner took cover behind a tree, chest heaving. He couldn't just keep taking hits like this, he thought, but looking around, he couldn't find even a single branch. How could he fight back? Despair gnawed at him. Glancing down, he saw 4 or 5 thumb-sized pebbles at his feet. His eyes lit up. Just you wait and see what Little Lee Flying Dagger is all about. No, wait, Little Cheen Flying Stones. Picking up the pebbles, a grin spread across Ethan Tanner's face. After being on the receiving end for so long, he could finally retaliate. Bang! As Ethan Tanner peeked out from behind the tree, a bullet whizzed past him. Alexander White had been watching him like a hawk, ready to fire the moment he showed himself. Damn it, I'm trapped. Cursing under his breath, Ethan Tanner took off his jacket and then his shoes. He used a shoe to prop up the jacket and slowly edged it out from behind the tree, making it look like his body was exposed. Sure enough, bang! Alexander White fired the instant the jacket appeared, the bullet ripping through it. If it had been him, he'd be dead or seriously injured. The moment Alexander White fired, Ethan Tanner darted out like a wildcat, diving for cover behind another tree before Alexander White could reacquire his target. Bang! Alexander White fired at the tree, and as he did, Ethan Tanner was already on the move again, charging towards him, guns blazing. Click, click. Seeing Ethan Tanner rushing him, Alexander White frantically tried to fire, but his gun was empty. He ejected the magazine to reload. Ethan Tanner wasn't about to give him the chance. A thumb-sized pebble flashed in his hand, flung with the precision of a dart thrower. A sharp thwack echoed as the pebble struck Alexander White's hand before he could reload, sending his gun clattering to the ground. Whiz! 2 more pebbles flew from Ethan Tanner's hand. One ricocheted off the discarded gun, the other aimed squarely at Alexander White's knee. Alexander White had a choice: grab the gun and risk a leg injury, or dodge the pebble and lose the weapon. In that split second, he chose his legs. Mimicking Ethan Tanner's earlier move, he rolled to the side, avoiding the knee-bound projectile. He had no chance to retrieve his gun now, Ethan Tanner was already there. Click, the unseated magazine slammed home, and Ethan Tanner chambered around. The tables have turned. Finally, it's my turn to hold the gun. Huh, Alexander White, you bastard, what do you have to say now? Even your last resort is in my hands. Ethan Tanner sneered, aiming the gun at the prone Alexander White, his face a mask of mockery. If it weren't for this bastard, Ethan Tanner thought, none of this would have happened, forcing him to cough up blood. What a waste. Knowing escape was impossible, Alexander White glared at Ethan Tanner with pure venom. If it weren't for him, his plan would have succeeded, and he would be at the helm of the Tan family. But in the end, it was all ruined by Ethan Tanner's arrival. Chapter 45, Concern Alexander White now wished he could drink Ethan Tanner's blood and eat his flesh. Of course, if he could, but Ethan Tanner obviously wouldn't give him the chance. Speak, who sent you? Ethan Tanner aimed his gun at Alexander White and asked coldly, just based on those foreigners who showed up, I won't believe you're alone, Alexander White. Humph, you think I'll talk? Alexander White looked at Ethan Tanner sarcastically, then said spitefully, don't worry, you'll soon be down here keeping me company, even if you are with Wolf Fong. Crack. He bit a cyanide capsule hidden in his false tooth, black blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, his head tilted to the side as he died, but his eyes remained fixed on Ethan Tanner, a look of utter defiance on his face. Ethan Tanner appeared unconcerned. This was Hoaha, not some foreign country. Hoaha was a nation with extremely strict laws, no organization or force could easily cause trouble on Hoaha's territory. And if it were just one or two people, he wouldn't bat an eye. Another thing was that after tonight's battle, Ethan Tanner felt like he had changed, somewhat different from before. But he couldn't quite put his finger on what that feeling was. He pocketed Alexander White's gun and also retrieved 2 magazines from his body. These were good finds. In Hoaha, gun and poison control was extremely strict. Ethan Tanner didn't know how Alexander White had managed to get them past customs, but now that they were in his hands, they were naturally his. Mercenaries weren't assassins who primarily used cold weapons. They used hot weapons more, even some high-tech ones. Ethan Tanner was an all-around warrior when he was in Wolf Fong. Returning to the abandoned factory, Hank Stone, as expected, hadn't harmed Sophia Tan, but was cautiously guarding her, waiting for Ethan Tanner's return. It took Ethan Tanner almost half an hour to get back. Seeing Ethan Tanner return, Sophia Tan breathed a sigh of relief. She ran over, looked at the shirtless Ethan Tanner, and asked worriedly, "How are you? Are you alright?" "Yeah." Ethan Tanner nodded, then looked at Hank Stone and said, "Remember, you can come find me." After that, he took Sophia Tan and left the place, driving the black car parked outside the abandoned factory back to Hongbin Villa. On the way back, he called Old Man Tu, telling him that Sophia Tan was safe and not to worry. Sophia Tan also spoke a few words before hanging up. The warm water from the showerhead sprayed down, creating a curtain of rain. Sophia Tan stood beneath it, washing herself. Today could be said to be a heart-pounding day. Even the assassin's attempt on her life wasn't as stimulating, because that night, the power was out, and she couldn't see anything. But today, she witnessed everything with her own eyes. Ethan Tanner, the man she once intensely disliked and despised, coughed up blood to save her. At that moment, she couldn't deny that Ethan Tanner had truly entered her heart. Before, when Ethan Tanner was in the hospital, perhaps guilt was the more prominent feeling in her heart, but at that moment, it was true love. It was a love no girl could be immune to. Since childhood, every girl has a dream, to be rescued by a handsome man when in danger. Sophia Tan was no exception. Later, as she entered society, that thought was buried deep within her heart. When that truly appears, no woman can refuse. Now, Sophia Tan was just like that. Click, the bathroom door opened, a pink towel wrapped around her. Looking at Ethan Tanner sleeping soundly on the bed, a mischievous smile appeared on Sophia Tan's lips. She remembered the first day Ethan Tanner came to the villa and secretly watched her bathe. At that time, this bastard saw her whole body, but now, looking at him sleeping, she found him a little adorable. On the living room sofa, Ethan Tanner curled up, hugging a pillow, his whole body leaning against the back of the sofa. Psychologically speaking, this was a sleeping position that showed a severe lack of security because it allowed for an immediate reaction and awakening in case of danger. Sophia Tan came closer to look and was momentarily speechless. This guy was talking in his sleep. Delicious, delicious. Wife, you're so naughty, not even giving me breakfast. Smack, smack, Ethan Tanner's mouth moved, and then he continued to sleep soundly. Sophia Tan looked at Ethan Tanner, wanting to bite him. She didn't expect this bastard to be so vindictive. She didn't make him breakfast last time, and he still remembered it, even talking about it in his sleep. Covering him with a thin blanket, Sophia Tan didn't wake him because she knew Ethan Tanner was really tired today. The afternoon sun was somewhat harsh. Ethan Tanner sat on the second-floor balcony of the villa, lazily basking in the sun. Although it was a bit hot, there was an indescribable feeling of reality. He was shirtless, letting the sunlight shine on his back, his eyes half closed, half awake, unaware that something seemed to be appearing on his back. Under the sunlight. Irregular lines on his back seemed to be sketching something. Under the sunlight, those lines appeared jet black. Last night, after Ethan Tanner fell asleep on the sofa, he didn't wake up until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Looking at the thin pink blanket on him, a smile appeared on the corner of Ethan Tanner's lips. It was clearly Sophia Tan who had covered him. Although he would have been fine without the blanket, this showed Sophia Tan's care for him. On the tea table, Sophia Tan also left a note that said breakfast was in the microwave in the kitchen, and if it was cold, he could reheat it and eat it. After that, she drew a mischievous face and said, "Next time, don't say I didn't give you breakfast." Looking at the last line, Ethan Tanner didn't understand what it was about. Did he say she didn't give him breakfast? Shaking his head, Ethan Tanner went into the kitchen, and then he ended up like this. Suddenly, the phone in his pocket rang. Ethan Tanner hurriedly stood up to answer the call. Behind him, as he stood up, the lines stopped drawing. There was still nothing there, as if the lines that appeared under the sunlight just now were merely an illusion. "Hello? Who is this?" Ethan Tanner answered the phone. An unknown number appeared on the screen, but the area code was from Wind City. Ethan Tanner was a little puzzled. Who would call him? Brother Fong? It's Hank Stone. A very respectful voice came from the other end of the line upon hearing Ethan Tanner's question. Even Ethan Tanner could hear it. Hank Stone. Ethan Tanner thought for a moment. When did he know someone like that? Moreover, he had only been in Wind City for 3 months, including 1 month in the hospital. Before that, he was either at the company or in his small rented house. After confirming and reconfirming, he was sure he didn't know anyone named Hank Stone, so he said a little helplessly, "You have the wrong number, right? I don't know you." On the other end of the line, Hank Stone heard Ethan Tanner say he didn't know him again. He repeatedly checked the number. It wasn't wrong. This was the number Ethan Tanner saved in his phone last night. He said he could contact him. Why did he say he didn't know him today? Could he be messing with me? Hank Stone thought to himself, but quickly shook his head. Ethan Tanner wasn't that kind of boring person, and there was no need for him to do that. "Didn't you say I could look for you last night?" Hank Stone cautiously said. After returning to his territory last night, he hadn't slept a wink. Although he had no shortage of men under his command, most of those who followed him last night, after waking up, said they wanted to leave the Iron Bear mercenaries. Before, they just wanted to earn a living, and when they had free time, they could bully those weaker than themselves. But after witnessing Ethan Tanner's combat prowess, they realized how green they were. In his hands, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. Moreover, when they joined the Iron Bear mercenaries, they never thought about risking their lives. This time, having truly tasted the feeling of life and death, they all clamored to leave the Iron Bear mercenary group. Hank Stone didn't refuse, agreeing to all of them. It was all because of Ethan Tanner's words, that they could look for him if they had any problems in the future. Ethan Tanner was from Wolf Fong. In him, Hank found the passion he had when he was a mercenary years ago. Mercenaries didn't need dead weight, so he didn't try to hold them back. As those who participated in the mission wanted to leave, their words could only exaggerate, not downplay, the situation, so most of the others under his command also left. In the end, only 20-something people remained. Last night? Ethan Tanner muttered to himself, then recalled last night when he and Sophia Tan returned to the Fragrant Coast Villa. It seemed he had fallen asleep, and then... Oh. It's you. What's up? It took Ethan Tanner a long time to remember Hank Stone. When he gave him his number, he did have some thoughts in mind. Initially, he thought that after leaving Wolf Fong, he would stay away from killing, but unexpectedly, in less than 2 months, he had encountered 2 groups of people, both with considerable strength, and the result was that he was dragged back in. First, it was Heaven's Ghost, sending a bronze-level assassin to assassinate Sophia Tan, who he ended up killing, but he himself almost met his maker. Then there was Alexander White and his gang. Heaven's Ghost could be said to have a reason, but with this Alexander White, Ethan Tanner didn't know if he had stepped in dog shit. He even encountered another organization trying to infiltrate China and ended up making enemies. Ethan Tanner felt helpless with himself. Now that he finally had a period of peace, he thought about establishing his own force. One person alone was ultimately no match for 4 hands, not to mention who knew what else he would encounter in the future. In short, he felt he was a bit slow to react. Hank Stone was just a sudden thought he had yesterday. He didn't expect the old man to seek him out so quickly. Hashtag Chapter 46, Sky Wolf Association. These past few days, Ethan Tanner hadn't gone to work at Tan Corporation. He spent every day at the Fragrant Coast Villa, enjoying Sophia Tan's cooking. This simple life was truly comfortable, and Sophia Tan didn't say anything about it. Moreover, she secretly harbored a reluctance to let Ethan Tanner go to work, for she hadn't forgotten their encounter in the Tan Corporation hallway. He'd been embracing a female employee. Previously, she wouldn't have commented, but now she intensely disliked the idea of such a scene. Besides, she reasoned, the vast Tan family fortune could easily support Ethan Tanner. What did it matter if he didn't work? Oblivious to Sophia Tan's kept man treatment, Ethan Tanner was thoroughly enjoying his leisurely days, feeling his bones turning to jelly. However, he wasn't entirely idle. When Sophia Tan was out, he visited the entertainment company she'd assigned him to assess. He hadn't forgotten her freeloader jab. As a member of the top-tier mercenary organization Wolf Fong, his pride wouldn't allow it. He could joke and appear carefree, but when it came to serious work, the impossible had to become possible. Concealing his ownership, Ethan Tanner entered the company as a customer, only to be met with profound disappointment by the staff. The employees seemed listless, tossing him, the customer, some materials to peruse. Ethan Tanner was speechless, realizing the extent of Sophia Tan's previous disdain for him. This wasn't a company, it was a stagnant pool. Today, he wasn't staying home. He rode with Sophia Tan from the Seaview Villas, then exited the car as they reached Wind City's bustling downtown area. He had a meeting scheduled with Hank Stone. After getting out, Ethan Tanner hailed a cab, stating Iron Fist Club, before settling in the back to rest. The Iron Fist Club was Hank Stone's designated meeting place. Unlike other gangs, Hank Stone's Iron Bear mercenary group wasn't based on the outskirts but right in Wind City's center. He ran a bar-like club that served as their headquarters. Arriving at the Iron Fist Club, Ethan Tanner found it closed, a temporarily closed sign displayed. He bristled. Damn it, how was he supposed to get in? Pulling out his Nokia brick phone, he called Hank Stone. The hell? Why's it closed? Want me to kick the door down? Hank Stone's annoyance vanished at the sound of Ethan Tanner's voice. He hurried to greet him, emerging from a side door of the Iron Fist Club. Seeing Ethan Tanner's displeasure, he approached with a fawning smile. "Brother Fong." Ethan Tanner didn't find it odd. Though Hank Stone was over a decade older, this was how his squad in Wolf Fong addressed him. Hank Stone offered him a cigarette from a pack, lit it, and led him into the Iron Fist Club. Inside, Ethan Tanner saw only 20-odd men, the oldest around his age, 23 or 24, the youngest perhaps no older than 18. He looked at Hank Stone with a touch of exasperation. "Is this all that's left?" Seeing Ethan Tanner's displeasure, Hank Stone wore a bitter expression. After that failed mission, who would dare stay under his command? The 20-odd remaining men were either homeless or had enemies they dared not face alone, otherwise, there might be even fewer. Ethan Tanner took a long drag of his cigarette, then looked at them and said, "Why are you staying? Or to put it another way, do you know the consequences of staying?" Actually, having this many people left far exceeded Ethan Tanner's expectations. He thought there might be no more than 10, or even 5, so he was quite satisfied with the current 20-odd. To follow Brother Fong and conquer the world. Ethan Tanner glanced around, seeing the bewildered expressions on the others' faces. He saw in their eyes only the search for protection. Just then, the youngest one spoke up boldly. His voice was even younger than his age. Ethan Tanner guessed he was only about 16. Although he spoke, his trembling voice was audible to everyone. "Oh. Conquer the world? Who said I wanted to conquer the world?" Ethan Tanner looked at the kid with a weary expression, thinking, damn, conquer the world. With these 20-odd cannon fodder, Boss Hung said, he said Brother Fong would lead us to conquer the world. Hearing this, Ethan Tanner's face darkened as he looked towards Hank Stone. So it was this old man who said it. Seeing Ethan Tanner's gaze, Hank Stone gave an awkward laugh and said, "Brother Fong, don't listen to Xiao Jie's nonsense. I didn't say that." Ethan Tanner rolled his eyes but didn't bother arguing with him. He raised a hand to silence them, then said sternly, "I don't care what your intentions were before. Now I'm giving you a chance. If you want to leave, leave now. If you still want to leave after today, you're a traitor, and traitors are deserters. Do you know what happens to deserters on the battlefield? They're shot on the spot. So, as long as you don't leave today, we're all brothers. Of course, I won't blame you if you leave now, because the path we're taking isn't exactly legitimate." Ethan Tanner stopped there, his gaze sweeping over everyone, seeing their faces pale from the killing intent he had just exuded. Sure enough, not long after, someone stood up and said, "I'm out." Then, without looking back, he ran out of the Iron Fist Club. Others followed. Half an hour later, a few of the 20-odd men had left, leaving only 12, plus Hank Stone, making 13, including Ethan Tanner. "Good. Since you've all chosen to stay, then we're brothers from now on. Brothers are those who can watch your back while you face the enemy, who can take a knife for you. Now tell me, can you do that?" "We can." Their voices were uneven, their replies hesitant. They clearly hadn't recovered from Ethan Tanner's killing intent. The boy, Xiao Jie, had lost all color in his face. "Haven't y'all eaten yet? I'm a skin again, can y'all do this or not?" This time, Ethan Tanner's menace was thicker than swamp fog, making everyone shiver, but their spirits suddenly perked up. They all yelled back, "We can." Their voices boomed like thunder, but that was pure fright talkin'. Even Hank Stone, a man who'd walked the dark alleys and seen his share of bloodshed, felt it. He'd never sensed such raw intensity, not even from his old mercenary captain. It was chilling to think how much blood Ethan Tanner must have spilled. If even Hank Stone, hardened as he was, could barely stand the pressure, these city slicker flowers didn't stand a chance. Good, good. Now, what was I gonna say? Everyone went silent, staring at Ethan Tanner. Was this some kinda game? One minute he's all fire and brimstone, the next he's forgotten his lines. What was this, amateur hour? Hank Stone gaped at Ethan Tanner, wonderin' if he'd made a mistake throwin' in with him. Well, if there's nothin' else to say, let's drink. Hank Stone, get the booze. Ethan Tanner didn't miss a beat. As soon as he spoke, the tension eased, and folks started breathin' again. Hank Stone hauled a big crate of beer from behind the counter. 13 men popped open bottles and clinked them together. After a round with Ethan Tanner, they seemed to loosen up, not so stiff and formal. Word had gotten around from the guys who'd left earlier. They knew a little something about Ethan Tanner. The tall tales had spooked M, but that preconceived fear was melting away. Ethan Tanner wasn't anything like the rumor said. He was actually pretty affable. Quit drinking like dummies. Tell me, why'd y'all choose this path? Ethan Tanner looked at the men, none older than himself. He couldn't fathom why they'd chosen such a dark, dead-end road.